Chapter 1102. Thinking of the blue hole, Gunyenji's mind was filled with a vast expanse of bluish-purple electric light. Under the blue sky, the electric light was like a golden snake dancing wildly, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The sky and the sea seemed to be reversed. The sea flashing with bluish-purple electric light was the sky flashing with electric light, and the blue sky was like a calm ocean. Gunyenji felt dizzy. She blinked her eyes and all she could see was a calm blue sky. The sky was still clear and the sea was blue. The bluish-purple electric light that had just appeared in her mind seemed to have never existed. The bluish-purple electric light in the blue hole was an extreme form of the electric fence. Song Jining had told her that the buoys in front of her were used to generate electromagnetic interference. Was there any connection between the two? Gunyenji narrowed her eyes and turned to walk into the cabin where Song Jining was. She stood quietly beside her for a while and saw that Song Jining's forehead was covered in sweat. She knew that she was having a hard time coping. Gunyenji asked softly, "Miss Song, is the electromagnetic interference stronger this time?" Song Jining smiled bitterly and didn't look up. She said sullenly, "The Japanese are really putting in a lot of effort this time. Do you see the pattern formed by those buoys?" Gunyenji nodded. "It's like a circle of mosquito coils, but also a closed ring. Yes, this shape can amplify electromagnetic interference to the maximum." Song Jining's face was gloomy. "It's even stronger than the electromagnetic interference I encountered on the plane last time." Gunyenji's heart skipped a beat and almost jumped out of her throat. She coughed softly, covered her throat and said softly, "So you mean that it's more difficult to counter the interference now?" She didn't say impossible, but only more difficult, because she didn't want to put too much pressure on Song Jining. Song Jining sighed softly. "I'll try my best." She had been engaged in scientific research all her life, and the rigor in her words and actions was deeply ingrained in her bones. Even if she was now facing a life-and-death situation with her only son, she didn't lose this calm and rational stance. Gunyenji's big eyes turned, and she looked at the dense data on Song Jining's instrument. She whispered, "Miss Song, I want to ask you, can electromagnetic energy be freely converted? So, what is the efficiency of the conversion?" Song Jining was stunned. "What did you say?" Her attention had been focused on anti-electromagnetic interference, so she didn't realize what Gunyenji was asking. Gunyenji's mind was completely occupied by the blue hole that was flashing with violet lightning. She said firmly, "What we're facing now is a terrifyingly powerful magnetic field, right?" "Yes, so the electromagnetic interference it emits is very scary. I may need some time to achieve anti-interference, but..." Song Jining closed her eyes weakly. "But Xiaoheng and the others don't have much time left." Gunyenji's lips trembled. She opened and closed her mouth several times before she found her voice. "How much longer?" "I heard from the military that their scuba equipment can only last for 3 hours at most." Song Jining sat back down. "We don't have time to waste. Nyenji, help me calculate these numbers." Gunyenji placed a hand on Song Jining's thin shoulder. "Miss Song, how long do you think it will take for us to calculate all the data?" Because the strength of the other party's magnetic field had suddenly increased geometrically, the amount of calculations they had to do had also increased geometrically. Song Jining's voice was a little choked. "Even if we use Xiaoheng's supercomputer, it will take at least 5 hours. With their current small laptops, it would probably take about 5 by 5 hours. So what was the use of calculating it? They could only avenge them. If Hua Xiaoheng had met with misfortune in a place she couldn't see, Gunyenji could still hold on to avenge him. But now that he was right in front of her, less than half an hour's journey away, she absolutely couldn't watch Hua Xiaoheng die in front of her. Gunyenji shook her head. "Miss Song, this method won't work. We have to think of another way." "Another way? Just thinking about it might take 3 hours." Song Jining snorted. "Hurry up and calculate it. Use your program. Maybe you can speed up the time." But the amount of calculations was there. No matter how fast her program was, it was still limited by the computer hardware. The hardware was the bottleneck of technological development. Gunyenji reached out and placed her hand on Song Jining's keyboard. Her voice already had an abnormal fanaticism. "Miss Song, since it's too late anyway, why don't we use a new method?" Song Jining turned around to look at her. She wanted to reprimand her for being so whimsical at this time, but when she saw that Gunyenji's eyes were red and full of tears, she didn't realize it and still looked at her hopefully. Her heart softened. She stood up and placed her hands on Gunyenji's round and small shoulders. She said softly, "Nyenji, I know you feel bad, but Gunyanji grabbed Song Jinning's hand and said loudly, "Miss Song, we have a way." Really? The blue hole that flashed with bluish-purple lightning had been hovering in Gunyanji's mind, and she finally found an opportunity to pour it out. Gunyanji asked Song Jinning loudly, "Miss Song, tell me, can electric and magnetic fields be converted into each other?" What she had been thinking about just now was the bluish-purple lightning in the blue hole's waters. It was an extreme form of electric fence. The electric current had almost no resistance and was shockingly powerful. Song Jinning also said that the buoy in front of her could produce powerful and intimidating electromagnetic interference. In other words, this buoy produced a powerful magnetic field. Electromagnetism, electricity, and magnetism were originally two kinds of energy that were related to each other. Song Jinning was also stunned by Gunyanji's question. She nodded affirmatively and said, "Of course. A changing magnetic field can produce an electric field, and a changing electric field can also produce a magnetic field. In theory, electric and magnetic fields can be converted into each other." Really? Gunyanji's eyes suddenly lit up. Her previous hopeless situation suddenly became a glimmer of hope. "Do you mean that magnetic and electric fields can be converted into each other? Then, can we convert this magnetic field into an electric field?" Song Jinning looked at Gunyanji dumbfounded. Her first reaction was that this girl was crazy, but her second reaction was that this girl was indeed a genius. There was only a thin line between a madman and a genius, because this idea was indeed feasible. If the strong magnetic field here was converted into an electric field, then the electromagnetic interference could be ignored, and their drones could come in handy again. The enemy's warships would be under the attack of their drones. Also, they could send more Frogman soldiers to rescue Hua Xiaoheng and his group of trapped Special Operations Forces members. Song Jinning's hand tightened on Gunyanji's shoulder, and her mind began to ponder the various conditions and requirements for the conversion of magnetic and electric fields. According to the law of conservation of energy, under perfect conditions, magnetic and electric fields would be converted into each other without loss. But in reality, there were no perfect conversion conditions, so this conversion would definitely cause a huge energy loss. It would almost offset most of the strong magnetic field, and the electric field generated by the conversion would not be very strong. But this was only Song Jinning's theoretical deduction. If the situation here was more special, and the conversion of a strong magnetic field to an electric field did not have the energy loss they imagined, then the resulting electric field would be an absolutely terrifying existence. "Yanji, do you know what the consequences will be? Even if there is only a 1 in a million possibility, I have to tell you." Song Jinning told Gunyanji the worst consequences. Gunyanji didn't care. She nodded firmly. "I know, I've seen it." As she spoke, she told Song Jinning about the scene she had seen in the Caribbean Blue Hole. Of course, she didn't say that she and Hua Xiaoheng were in danger there. After Song Jinning listened, she frowned for a full 10 minutes before letting out a long sigh. "So that's how it is. I really don't know who set up the electric fence there. I must go see it when I have the chance in the future. However," she touched Gunyanji's head, "what you said makes sense. It is indeed feasible. Maybe it will be faster than us recalculating the data. However, to achieve the conversion, we need to go to the buoy to make various changes, which requires more cumbersome technical means. There are no technical soldiers here, and I'm afraid no one can do it." Gunyanji immediately puffed out her chest. "Miss Song, I am your technical soldier. Let me go. I can swim and I know how to operate your equipment. I am the most suitable candidate." Song Jinning was still very hesitant. She walked around the cabin with her hands behind her back. "Yanji, no one has ever done this experiment before. It's just an idea for now, and there is a possibility of failure. Think about it carefully. If you go, you may not come back." "No, it will definitely succeed. I've seen people succeed before. I know what it should look like here." Gunyanji pointed to her head. Her eyes were sparkling as if there were torches burning in them. They were shockingly bright, and her whole person was full of enthusiasm and vitality. At this moment, her beauty was vivid and lively, and there was no words to describe it. No matter who saw her now, they couldn't help but feel their hearts palpitate. Song Jinning completely understood why her solemn, calm, and exceptionally intelligent son was moved by this little girl. However, she also completely dispelled the idea of letting Gunyanji study high-energy physics with her and become a scientist to inherit her mantle. Because this little girl was too enthusiastic, too impulsive, and didn't possess the rationality and calmness unique to scientific researchers. Song Jinning paused for a moment. She put aside these random thoughts and began to consider various practical problems. "However, even if you go and achieve the transformation, How are you going to get out once you enter the range of those buoys? The conversion of magnetic and electric fields wasn't difficult for Song Jining. She often did experiments in this area, but if the strong magnetic field really transformed into an electric field, it would generate a high voltage and the seawater was conductive. They could be electrocuted in minutes. Gu Nianji had already thought about it. She raised her eyebrows. I'll go ask the military and see if they have diving suits made of insulating material. Song Jining's eyebrows completely relaxed. Okay, you go ask. I'll prepare the materials and equipment. Gu Nianji nodded quickly. I'll go ask, but Miss Song, it's good that you and I know about this. Before we succeed, not too many people know. I know that. Song Jining had suffered a lot in the past, so she was much more cautious now. I'll tell the military that they sent you to destroy the other party's strong electromagnetic interference. In fact, the real purpose was for Gu Nianji to take people to install special equipment to convert the magnetic field into an electric field. This was the first night watch. It was the third night watch today. Everyone's guaranteed monthly votes. Hurry up and vote. The second night watch at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the third night watch at 7 o'clock in the evening. P.S. Thank you Fish G for the 50,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Moi. Chapter 1103. After Gu Nianji left Song Jining's cabin, she went straight to the highest-ranking naval colonel on the research ship. Colonel Liu, Director Song wants to ask if you have any diving suits made of special materials, especially insulating materials. Gu Nianji asked carefully, trying not to reveal any strange expressions. Colonel Liu glanced at her and frowned. An insulating diving suit? What do you want it for? You'll have to ask Director Song about that. I don't know. Gu Nianji pushed all the blame to Song Jining and didn't want to overstep her boundaries. She could see that the Navy colonel was very cautious and did not trust easily. Gu Nianji was now Song Jining's assistant, so Song Jining should be in charge of such matters. Gu Nianji was just a messenger. She knew her position very well. Colonel Liu was from the Navy and wasn't familiar with the people in Hua Xiaoheng's division. He didn't even know that Hua Xiaoheng used to be Gu Nianji's guardian. Therefore, he had always been wary of Gu Nianji and felt that she didn't act like an assistant. Gu Nianji also knew that she had been too impatient. Since she didn't want to reveal her marriage to Hua Xiaoheng, she could only act like an assistant. Colonel Liu nodded and went to talk to Song Jining. Gu Nianji stood alone at the bow of the boat, lost in thought as she stared at the distant sea. The Japanese light destroyer and their research ship looked at each other across the sea. Gu Nianji didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that the warship was arrogantly looking down on her. Gu Nianji gave the warship a disdainful thumbs-down gesture. She thought to herself, I'll let you be cocky for a while longer. When I get my diving suit, I'll teach you a lesson. Colonel Liu came out of Song Jining's cabin just in time to see Gu Nianji's childish behavior. His wariness immediately dissipated. This was a hot-blooded child. He was too cautious. When he spoke to Gu Nianji again, Colonel Liu's tone was much more amiable. Comrade Gu? Colonel Liu smiled as he stood behind Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji smiled and turned to Colonel Liu. Colonel Liu, just call me Comrade Gu. You don't have to add the word little. In my eyes, you're just a child, Colonel Liu said emotionally. How old are you? Are you 18? Gu Nianji's eyes widened. I'm 19. I'll be 20 this October. Colonel Liu. It's only March. Gu Nianji, all right, she didn't want to discuss this age issue with Colonel Liu. She smoothed her bun hair that was messed up by the sea breeze and hurriedly said, Director Song told you, right? Do you have an insulating wetsuit? Colonel Liu nodded. Director Song has already said that we need to send people over there to destroy the strong electromagnetic interference. We are worried that the equipment will leak, so we need insulating diving suits. Yes, do you have them? Gu Nianji was anxious. At least 17 sets. I'll take one and the other 4 will come with me. The other 12 are for the people trapped at the bottom of the sea. The 4 soldiers who went with her had to place magnetic field converters in the 4 directions of north, south, east, and west. Gu Nianji went to the center of the magnetic field to place the converter. Hua Xiaoheng's team originally had 13 people, but 1 member had already been sacrificed. Hua Xiaoheng had reported this to the base. Colonel Liu looked her up and down with some pity. Although she wasn't short, she was thin. Can you do it? Diving requires physical strength, and performing a mission requires even more strength. I'm fine. Don't look at me because I'm thin. I'm actually very healthy. Gu Nianji bent her small arm and wanted nothing more than to show Colonel Liu the little muscles on her arm. Although Colonel Liu had been worried, he was amused by Gu Nianji at this time. He said calmly, Okay then, I'll send you 4 frogmen soldiers. They will listen to your orders. Then he patted Gunyenji's shoulder. Keep it up and be careful. We will wait for your triumphant return. Thank you, Chief. Gunyenji was so excited that she snapped her feet together and gave Colonel Lu a very standard military salute. Although she wasn't a soldier, she had grown up with soldiers in the Special Operations Forces, so many of her mannerisms had the temperament of a soldier. Colonel Lu smiled. My daughter is only 2 years younger than you, and she still acts like a spoiled child to me at home. I should let her learn from you. Gunyenji shrugged indifferently and smiled. A child with parents is a treasure. You should take good care of your daughter. Don't mention other children in front of her. She will hate you. Colonel Lu laughed. I'll go prepare an insulating diving suit for you. Gather here in 5 minutes. Okay. Gunyenji answered loudly, then returned to Song Jinning's cabin and said, Director Song, we will set off in 5 minutes. We will arrive at our destination in half an hour. You can start debugging the synchronization equipment in half an hour. After they installed the magnetic field converter on the buoys, Song Jinning had to send a synchronized magnetic field signal to start the converter and start the magnetic field conversion. This process depended on the strength of the magnetic field that needed to be converted, as well as the energy lost during the conversion. Therefore, they didn't know how much time it would take. They could only observe while operating, so Gunyenji was irreplaceable. Colonel Lu had argued with Song Jinning earlier because he also thought that Gunyenji was too young and had not undergone systematic military training. He couldn't bear to let her go into the water to carry out such a difficult mission and face the Japanese's vicious frogman troops. Song Jinning had also tried to persuade Gunyenji, but Gunyenji was even more fanatical than she was. If they didn't agree, she would secretly go into the water herself, so Song Jinning had to give in. She only said one thing to Colonel Lu. Nianji grew up with Xiaoheng in the Special Operations Forces. She knows what she's doing. Colonel Lu finally understood the relationship between the two, so he didn't continue to object. Although he was still worried, this was the only way, so he agreed to Song Jinning's proposal. Song Jinning saw Gunyenji's excited expression and went over to straighten her collar. Remember to be careful. If there's a problem, you'd rather give up than lose yourself. Nianji, I'm very grateful that you're willing to save Xiaoheng, but I absolutely don't want you to die because of this. Do you understand what I mean? Scientists were always straightforward. Gunyenji liked this mode of communication very much. She promised Song Jinning, I will definitely bring Huoxiao back. Don't worry, Miss Song. Song Jinning closed her eyes and took Gunyenji's hand. When you come back, you can call me Mom, okay? Gunyenji was speechless. Or you can call me Mom right now. No matter what happens between you and Xiaoheng in the future, I will recognize you as my daughter. Song Jinning hugged Gunyenji. I'm not a good mother. Xiaoheng was raised by his grandmother when he was a child. But I can learn to be a good mother now. No matter who you marry in the future, I will treat you as my daughter. Even if she married Huoxiao and became Song Jinning's daughter-in-law, she would still have to call her Mom. Gunyenji was so touched that she couldn't control herself. She hugged Song Jinning back and whispered in her ear, Mom. The word came out of her lips and sounded a little strange. It seemed that the word Mom didn't exist in her dictionary and had just been forcibly added by Song Jinning. She called Mom, like a baby who had just begun to speak and was making these two sounds for the first time. Song Jinning felt even more sad. You have to take care of yourself. After the two of them said goodbye, Gunyenji came out of Song Jinning's cabin and went to check out the insulating diving suits. She took a set for herself and put on the other 12 sets in backpacks. The other 4 frogmen each carried 3 sets. Gunyenji carried 5 magnetic field converters, but she told others they were magnetic field interference devices. There was also a real high-power magnetic field interference device that Song Jinning had made in a hurry to help them explore the way. After checking everything, they went into the sea from the back of the ship. The sea was very cold, but fortunately the diving suit was made of insulating material and could even insulate against the cold. Gunyenji was wrapped tightly from head to toe and didn't feel cold. After the 5 of them went into the water, they dived deep and swam quickly in Huoxiaoheng's direction. Gunyenji carried a high-power anti-electromagnetic interference device with her, so they weren't affected by the strong electromagnetic interference over there. They sped all the way and arrived at the buoy in less than half an hour. Looking at the thin ferromagnetic tubes hanging down from the buoy from underwater, Gunyenji was amazed and finally understood why Song Jinning had said that the Japanese had put in a lot of effort. These materials looked special and valuable at first glance. Approaching the buoy, the anti-electromagnetic interference device on Gunyenji's body trembled visibly. It was going to explode. After arriving at the place, Gunyenji increased the anti-electromagnetic interference device's strength and could support a 5-minute call time. She asked a frogman soldier to get in touch with Hua Xiaoheng and told him about their plan. Because the plan was to be completed, Hua Xiaoheng and the others needed to attract the attention of the Japanese frogmen. Otherwise, hundreds of frogmen would swarm them and they wouldn't be able to put on anything. Gunyenji deliberately let the frogman soldier talk to Hua Xiaoheng because she didn't want Hua Xiaoheng to know she was there, so as not to increase his psychological burden. Hua Xiaoheng really didn't expect Gunyenji to really come. He knew she was on the scientific research ship, but considering that Song Jining didn't bring any other assistance, Hua Xiaoheng thought Gunyenji was helping Song Jining. He calmly said to the frogman soldier, "Okay, I'll launch an operation right away to attract the attention of the Japanese frogmen. You guys quickly install the interference device. Is 10 minutes enough? 15 minutes at most, no more." The frogman looked at Gunyenji and used the other communicator to contact Gunyenji. "How long will it take?" Gunyenji replied, 10 minutes is enough." The frogman told Hua Xiaoheng, "Just delay the Japanese frogmen for 10 minutes, and we can install the magnetic interference device." Hua Xiaoheng agreed and quickly deployed over there. Not long after, the water under the buoy began to spray, and the originally calm sea suddenly became turbulent. It was the second watch. It was the third watch today. Everyone please vote for your guaranteed monthly votes. It was 7 o'clock in the evening, the third watch. Moi. Chapter 1104. The buoy swayed, and the thin iron pipes hanging down rippled with the sea, and the magnetic field suddenly became much stronger. The high-power magnetic field jammer that Gunyenji carried with her was no longer working. She and 4 frogman soldiers hid in a reef cave next to a cluster of gorgeous corals and observed the situation through a periscope. She didn't know what Hua Xiaoheng and the others had launched, but the Japanese frogmen obviously couldn't wait any longer and swam towards the turbulent area. Their defense immediately relaxed a lot. Gunyenji immediately commanded the other 4 frogman soldiers through the intercom in her diving suit, "We have 10 minutes to prepare." She gestured at the circle of buoys above her head and said to the 4 frogmen, "The diameter of the circle formed by the buoys here should be about 500 meters. We are staying in the east, so with this as the starting point, you go north and swim around the buoys. You go south and swim around the buoys, and you swim directly to the west, which is 500 meters in diameter." There were people installing magnetic field converters at the 4 points of such a circle. Gunyenji took the most powerful magnetic field converter to the center where the magnetic field interference source was installed to maximize its effectiveness. This was easy to say but not easy to do. Fortunately, Hua Xiaoheng and the others had attracted the attention of the Japanese frogmen, otherwise it would have been an impossible task. However, Gunyenji had a lot on her mind. She had a goal for the next step, which was to attract the attention of the Japanese frogmen in order to lure them into the buoy circle. The 4 frogmen soldiers were all carefully selected outstanding soldiers, and they were terrifyingly good in the water. Gunyenji watched for a while and found that when the 4 people were in position, the Japanese frogmen still lurking on the bottom of the sea didn't seem to notice them at all. Of course, Hua Xiaoheng and the others were making too much noise, and almost no one noticed that someone was fishing in troubled waters. 10 minutes later, the 4 frogmen soldiers installed the magnetic field converter under the buoy indicated by Gunyenji, and then dived to the bottom of the sea. Gunyenji swam alone to the center of the buoy circle diameter and found the magnetic field emission source. This emission source was different from any magnetic field emission source that Gunyenji had ever seen. It was disc-shaped and looked like a UFO disc that people used to play and throw. Even the edges that were slightly rolled inwards were exactly the same. However, the magnetic field emitted by this thing was amplified by the buoy circle, and its strength was terrifying to an astonishing degree. Gunyenji carefully looked at the magnetic field emitting source and also tried to pry open the sealed disc with the engineering knife she carried with her. However, the engineering knife that could cut through tank steel couldn't pry open the disc at all. Therefore, her previous idea was correct. It was impossible to destroy the magnetic field emitting source here. Only energy conversion was the correct way to destroy the strong electromagnetic interference here. Gunyenji put away the engineering knife and took out the maximum power magnetic field converter. She turned it on and began frequency modulation processing until it was synchronized with the magnetic field frequency there. Then she carefully buckled it to the bottom of the disc and sealed it tightly with black insulating tape. Only the inside was attached to the magnetic field emitting source. At the synchronized frequency of the magnetic field, the energy conversion began. If he only relied on this magnetic field converter, it would probably take a few hundred years to convert such a strong magnetic field into an electric field. Therefore, they couldn't just rely on these instruments. In addition to the magnetic field converter they had installed on the buoy, Song Jining was using the data she had obtained from the strange magnetic field on the scientific research ship to break through the hardware limits and use a new method of electromagnetic induction to replenish energy from a distance. The energy replenished in this way was geometrically more than the energy provided by the 5 magnetic field converters, so it could convert a large-scale magnetic field into an electric field in a short period of time. However, Gunyinji and Song Jining had no idea how much time it would take. Gunyinji floated alone directly below the center of the circle of buoys on the seabed. She stared at the magnetic field converter above her head and held the remote control in her hand to check the data. The number jumped so fast that it was almost impossible to see with the naked eye. However, she could feel that the interference of the magnetic field was gradually decreasing because a clearer voice was gradually coming from her Bluetooth headset. It was the voice of Song Jining talking to her. "Nyenji? Nyenji? Can you hear me?" Song Jining's voice was intermittent, but she could already hear it clearly. Gunyinji suppressed her excitement. "I can hear you. Miss Song, is there a problem?" Song Jining's voice was so excited that her voice changed. "Nyenji, Nyenji, I can't believe my eyes. Do you know how much energy is lost when the magnetic field is converted to an electric field here?" Gunyinji looked at the remote control in her hand and shook her head with a smile. "I don't know. The data here is almost off the charts." "Mine is already off the charts." Song Jining also laughed. "Nyenji, I don't know where the Japanese got this buoy material, but when they undergo energy conversion the loss is 0. 0. Do you understand?" Gunyinji laughed at first, then her laughter froze. "Oh no. If there was no energy loss when the magnetic field was converted to an electric field, then how powerful would the electric fence, after the conversion be?" Thinking of the bluish-purple electric light in the blue hole's waters, Gunyinji suddenly turned around and swam in the direction of Hua Xiaoheng and the others. She anxiously informed them, "Quickly put on insulating diving suits. Quick! Put them on in 5 minutes. Otherwise, wait to be electrocuted." Hua Xiaoheng was holding a QBS-06 underwater assault rifle to snipe the captain of the Japanese frogman troops. When he heard the voice coming from the headset, his heart suddenly sank. "Nyenji?" Gunyinji pursed her lips and wanted to pretend that she didn't hear it. She continued to speak into the communicator. "Did you hear what I said? Quickly put on insulating diving suits. If you don't change in 5 minutes, wait to collect your corpse." Hua Xiaoheng saw that Gunyinji was pretending to be dumb, but this was not the time to reprimand her. He knew that she wouldn't speak without thinking, so Hua Xiaoheng also ordered through the Bluetooth headset, "Quickly put on the insulating diving suits brought by the frogmen. Hurry." The Special Operations Forces members who were fighting with the Japanese frogmen immediately retreated back to the reef cave where they had previously hidden and quickly changed into diving suits. The 4 frogmen soldiers who had already put on insulating diving suits were on guard with the QBS-06 underwater assault rifle. Hua Xiaoheng changed into the insulating diving suit and put it on Hong Kongquan. Hong Kongquan hadn't woken up in the past few hours. Anyway, as soon as there were signs of him waking up, Hua Xiaoheng knocked him out again so that he wouldn't cause trouble. 5 minutes later, all the personnel had changed into the insulating diving suits that Gunyinji had brought. Song Jining received Gunyinji's message and knew that the personnel here had already changed into insulating diving suits, so he immediately increased the energy supply of electromagnetic induction. The strong magnetic field here quickly transformed into an electric field and began to erupt with terrible energy. A team of scientists on the Japanese light destroyer was observing the magnetic field of the buoy here. They suddenly found that such a strong magnetic interference signal had suddenly disappeared from the monitoring equipment, and they were anxious. What on earth was the problem? They checked all the equipment on the ship and confirmed that there was no problem, which meant that there was a problem with the magnetic field emitting source on the sea. The chief scientist of the team of Japanese scientists put on a diving suit. "I'll go down and take a look." He was a very important high-energy physicist in Japan, and the Japanese military valued him very much. They even sent 2 of the most powerful frogmen in the Marine Corps to accompany him to the sea. The 3 of them swam to the magnetic field emitting source in the center of the buoy and found the magnetic field converter that Gunyinji had installed there. However, they didn't know what kind of instrument it was. They only knew that the existence of this instrument had greatly affected their magnetic field emitting source. "What is this?" The chief scientist curiously pulled it with his hand. "It's sealed with tape." At this time, no one thought that this thing was used to conduct magnetic field conversion. So he didn't hesitate to tear the edge of the tape with his hand. As soon as he tore a small hole, a high-voltage current no less than high-altitude lightning suddenly poured out. The chief scientist didn't even have time to say a word before he instantly turned into coke. The two frogmen in the Japanese Marine Corps who were following him were shocked and quickly slid back, then urgently notified the warship. There's a problem with the emitting source. It should be the Wuxia people. The chief scientist has died in the line of duty. The commander on the warship was furious when he heard the news and immediately ordered, "Don't wait any longer. Wipe out all the Wuxia soldiers. Leave no one alive." The Japanese frogmen received the news of the attack and immediately rushed into the circle of buoys. At this moment, Song Jining turned on the replenishment energy of the electromagnetic induction to the maximum, and the value almost reached the threshold of the strange magnetic field that appeared in Sea City. It was a critical data that was about to break through the sky, and in an instant, all the remaining magnetic field energy was activated and converted into an electric field. After Gu Nianji checked the data on the remote control and confirmed that the conversion was complete, she went to the reef cave in the circle of buoys where He Xiaoheng and the others were hiding and calmly commanded everyone to evacuate. "You guys go out first. There are no Japanese there. You guys go out from here. The buoys here are all electrified, so never take off your diving suits because our diving suits are insulators. The electromagnetic interference is gone. After you get out, you can contact the scientific research ship and ask them to send a speedboat to pick you up." Now the electromagnetic interference outside was gone, but the electric field in the circle of buoys was too strong and formed a built-in electromagnetic field that blocked communication signals. Therefore, Gu Nianji couldn't contact Song Jining. But it should be fine once they got out. When Gu Nianji ordered them to evacuate, He Xiaoheng had been standing guard at the entrance of the cave outside. Everyone made an evacuation plan, and after checking they began to rush out. Hong Kongquan, who had fainted, was the first to be taken out. The Special Operations Forces members behind him rushed out in groups of 3. The body of the Special Operations Forces member who had died was also carried on their backs to be taken back for burial. The people on this side rushed out in 2s and 3s, and they were finally discovered by some Japanese frogmen. They rushed over with guns, but He Xiaoheng carried a QBS-06 underwater sniper rifle and hid in a hidden place at the entrance of the cave. Like a god of death harvesting lives, he took out a Japanese frogman with one bullet. The other party was so terrified that they didn't dare to take another step forward. It was the third watch. It was the third watch today. Everyone please vote for your guaranteed monthly votes. Moi. Chapter 1105. Gu Nianji was the last to come out of the coral reef cave. There was one last thing she had to do after ensuring that everyone was safely evacuated. She hadn't discussed this matter with Song Jining because she didn't know if Song Jining would agree or disagree, but she had to do it. The Japanese were so arrogant this time and she couldn't take it lying down. If she didn't teach these arrogant Japanese a lesson, they would think that the Wuxia Empire was still the same pushover that didn't dare to fight back in the face of their butcher knives. Holding the remote control and swimming out, Gu Nianji looked down to check the voltage data on the remote control's LCD display. At that moment, a Japanese frogman quietly snuck up from behind Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji's position happened to block He Xiaoheng's line of sight, so He Xiaoheng didn't see the enemy swimming up from behind Gu Nianji. The Japanese frogman was holding an APS underwater assault rifle. He leaned against the colorful coral and raised the gun to aim at Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji caught a glimpse of a cold flash from the corner of her eye. It was the black light of the underwater sniper rifle's scope. Her mind raced and her legs quickly paddled backward, but she wasn't a truly well-trained elite soldier. Although her movements were already very fast, she still couldn't completely avoid it in time. A slender underwater bullet with a pointed cone whizzed past her side, creating a series of white waves. It didn't injure her, but the insulating diving suit was sliced open by the underwater bullet, which was as thin as an arrow with a pointed tip. Cold seawater immediately poured in. At this time, it had become a huge electric field. Although the energy had not yet fully erupted, the electric shock was already like fine needles, pricking her side. Gu Nianji was in so much pain that she blacked out. She quickly hid behind a nearby reef and lay on it to catch her breath. He Xiaoheng noticed that something was wrong with Gu Nianji, so he quickly adjusted the muzzle and raised the gun to aim. The whizzing underwater bullets suppressed the opponent's firepower. The Wuxia Empire's latest self-created QBS-06 underwater sniper rifle was indeed the frogman's nemesis. It had an overwhelming advantage against the APS underwater assault rifle used by the Japanese frogmen. Previously, Hua Xiaoheng had been very careful to use his bullets sparingly. One bullet for each enemy, he would not waste it. But when he saw Gunyanji's body sway in the water after the enemy fired the shot, his eyes instantly turned red. He completely forgot about saving bullets and pulled the trigger with both hands, turning the sniper rifle into a semi-automatic submachine gun. His QBS-06 underwater sniper rifle instantly turned the opponent into a sieve. Bullets flew out in all directions, and the seawater was dyed red by a cloud of blood mist with a boom. The gurgling seawater flowed in front of the Japanese frogman and out from behind him. The powerful water pressure penetrated his body, tearing him apart in an instant, as if he had self-destructed. Before the man could self-destruct, Hua Xiaoheng had already swum to Gunyanji's side. He hugged her and pressed her head against his chest. "Don't look." Gunyanji struggled. "I'm fine. Don't interfere with my work." She panicked and was about to press the remote control when she didn't expect Hua Xiaoheng to do this. Hua Xiaoheng loosened his arms, and Gunyanji turned around in his arms to find that more and more Japanese frogmen were rushing out of the buoy circle. It seemed that they finally realized that something was wrong. The electric field in this buoy circle was getting stronger and stronger, and the electric shock underwater was becoming more and more unbearable. Gunyanji gritted her teeth and kept rubbing her fingers on the remote control. Should she press it or not? She had made this plan herself, but now that the insulating diving suit had been cut, if she pressed the active button on the remote control, she would face the same electric shock as the blue hole. The memory of the pain from that time floated to her mind, and Gunyanji's whole body trembled. Hua Xiaoheng stood beside her and wanted to pull her out quickly. As soon as he grabbed her arm, Hua Xiaoheng was immediately keenly aware that Gunyanji's whole body was shaking constantly and irregularly. He was no stranger to this kind of shaking. It was not fear or panic but pain. It was an uncontrollable stress reaction of the whole body. What happened? Hua Xiaoheng quickly took Gunyanji's arm and turned her around. He looked around and suddenly saw a crack in Gunyanji's insulating diving suit that had been cut by a bullet. He remembered that Gunyanji had said that the sea was now electrified, and if she didn't change into an insulating diving suit, she would be subjected to a high-voltage electric shock. Hua Xiaoheng's heart suddenly shrank. He had suffered an electric shock in special training and knew what this kind of pain felt like. But it was one thing for him to bear it, but how could Gunyanji bear it? He couldn't forget Gunyanji, who had been electrocuted by the electric fence in the blue hole in the Caribbean Sea. Her pale and colorless face, her lower lip swollen and bloodshot from being bitten, and her miserable state of almost paralysis and shock. Thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind, and Hua Xiaoheng's movements were faster than his thoughts. He had already unfastened his insulating diving suit and quickly took it off, revealing the normal diving suit inside. Gunyanji was shocked and kept saying through the communicator in the mask, "You're crazy. Put it on. This is already an electric field. Do you know how much voltage there is? Do you want to die? Miss Song and I tried our best to save you, not to let you die." Hua Xiaoheng's heart was in turmoil, but he didn't say a word. He clamped both of her hands with one hand, pulled off her broken insulating diving suit, and put on his insulating diving suit for her. He then tightly zipped up all the zippers to isolate all the seawater. The pain on Gunyanji's body, which felt like it was being pricked by thousands of fine needles, disappeared without a trace in an instant. Hua Xiaoheng put on Gunyanji's broken insulating diving suit, held her tightly in his arms, and protected her with his whole body. The electric field in the sea was still gradually increasing, and the stronger the magnetic field was before, the more powerful this transformation was. The seawater penetrated through the gap in the insulating diving suit, and Hua Xiaoheng felt the pain of being electrocuted. His face twitched uncontrollably twice. But it was only physical pain, and his heart was extremely peaceful and happy at this time. Because of him, his lover didn't have to suffer this kind of pain that ordinary people couldn't bear. "Go." Hua Xiaoheng growled and his feet slammed on the reef. He held Gunyanji and rushed to the edge of the buoy circle like an arrow leaving the bow. As soon as the two of them rushed out of the buoy circle, Gunyanji immediately pressed the active button on the remote control. The wind on the sea calmed down and the waves were still. For a moment even time seemed to stand still. Gunyanji leaned against Hua Xiaoheng's arms and looked over his shoulder. It was just like when she was 12 years old and was being protected by Hua Xiaoheng in his arms, watching the car that had exploded into a mushroom cloud. The white buoy circle almost appeared illusory for a moment, and at that moment, the circles of mosquito coil-like buoys suddenly bounced up like beans being fried in a pan of oil, making a thunderous sound. At the same time, the bluish-purple electric light shot up into the sky and instantly lit up the buoy. And the thin ferromagnetic tubes hanging down from the buoy were all transformed into electric field emission sources. The mosquito coil-like electromagnetic buoy circle quickly transformed into a huge electric field, becoming a veritable electric fence. The bluish-purple electric light twisted its enchanting figure from the sea to the water, encircling the area with a diameter of 500 meters from top to bottom, left and right, forming an alternative blue hole. If a plane flew over at this time, it would be able to see that on the clear blue sea, there suddenly appeared a blue and purple body of water, almost exactly the same as the blue hole in the Caribbean Sea. But this was not a real blue hole, but a three-dimensional electric fence, tightly encircling hundreds of Japanese frogmen within the buoy circle. A few Japanese frogmen didn't know the severity of the situation and rashly tried to break out, but as soon as they touched the bluish-purple electric arc, they were immediately electrocuted to death. The bodies quickly turned into charcoal, floated to the surface, and drifted out of the buoy circle. The other Japanese frogmen didn't dare to act rashly, so they had to shrink inward. The range of this bluish-purple electric circle was so large, and the electric light was so strong that it even isolated the Japanese light destroyer not far away. 8 squares. What is this thing? Where did the electric light come from? This was clearly a strong magnetic field that they had arranged with the help of their chief scientist. The Japanese Marines on the warship were furious and desperately ordered to kill the escaping Wuxia Empire soldiers even if the shells hit the territorial waters of the Wuxia Empire. They had invested so much manpower, material resources, and the various spies that had been lurking in the Wuxia Empire for so many years, but almost all of them had been wiped out in one fell swoop. As a result, not only was Hong Kong gone, but even their biggest target, Wuxiaoheng, had escaped unscathed. The Major General of the Japanese Marines who commanded the battle had decided to commit suicide, but before that, he wanted to die with them. Fire. Under his order, the warship fired torpedoes in the direction of Guanyenji and the others, which was the maritime exclusive economic zone of the Wuxia Empire. But the torpedoes needed to pass through the electric fence shining with bluish-purple electric light in front of them. As a result, as soon as the torpedo broke in, it detonated prematurely because of the strong high-voltage electricity in the buoy circle. The loud rumbling sound set off huge waves, almost triggering a Category 2 hurricane. Almost all the Japanese warships were engulfed in the bluish-purple electric light. Song Jining discovered the strangeness on the scientific research ship. She didn't know what had caused the bluish-purple electric light to appear, but now that the Japanese were desperate and wanted to go to all-out war with them, how could she stand by and watch? Song Jining immediately cast strong electromagnetic interference on the Japanese warships. Seeing that launching torpedoes didn't work, the Japanese warships simply fired missiles into the air. However, the navigation of the cruise missiles was also confused by the strong electromagnetic interference. They turned 180 degrees in the air and accurately hit their own frigate. In a situation where the radar and navigation were completely out of order, it was a problem whether they could leave the sea flashing with bluish-purple electric light alive, let alone attack the other party. Postmodern warfare was no longer the era of human wave tactics. Song Jining's strong electromagnetic interference was the data she learned from the strange magnetic field in Sea City. No one on the blue planet could match it. It was so powerful that one person could completely paralyze the Japanese radar system and make it impossible to accurately track the target. In the past, she was limited by the power of the hardware and couldn't achieve such extreme results. But this time, with the energy converted from the strong magnetic field in the distance as a supplement, her strong electromagnetic interference formed a 360-degree coverage in this area of the sea without any blind spots. Although this kind of strength couldn't be replicated and might not appear again in the future at this moment, it played a real suppressive role and paralyzed all the Japanese warships and weapons that needed laser guidance. Retreat. Retreat. The supreme commander of the Japanese this time was the Admiral of the Navy. Seeing that his subordinates had committed suicide and all the weapons had failed, he was powerless to reverse the situation, so he could only give the order to return. Wuxiaoheng emerged from the sea with Guanyenji in his arms. Looking back at the bluish-purple electric light that looked like a blue hole in the Caribbean, the corners of his mouth curled into a happy smile. He lifted Guanyenji's mask, lowered his head and gently planted a deep kiss on her somewhat chapped lips. He asked her quietly, "What happened? Did you do it?" Guanyenji leaned into his arms and smiled slyly. My dear Major General, that was clearly the work of nature. What does it have to do with me? This was the first watch. It was the third watch today. Everyone hurry up and cast your guaranteed monthly votes. The second watch at 1 o'clock p.m., the third watch at 7 o'clock p.m. P.S. You didn't get stuck today, did you? Come in like the cute author and cast your monthly vote greater than over equal to 4. Oh. I love you guys so much. Chapter 11:06. The weather was fine, the sea was clear blue and the sky was blue. Not far away, the pulsing blue-purple electric light became the most beautiful color between the sea and the sky. After the smoke, this rare piece was even more precious. Hua Xiaoheng lowered his head and kissed Gunyanji again before continuing to swim to the research ship with her in his arms. Gunyanji remembered the electric shock Hua Xiaoheng had received in the sea. She touched his arm and whispered, "Do you hurt?" The sound was very small, so light that it was about to be carried away by the wind in the vast sea and sky, but it was no less than a heavy hammer that made Hua Xiaoheng's eyes sore. He couldn't say a word. He just hugged Gunyanji tighter and swam faster. Gunyanji didn't ask any more. She thought that a strong man like Hua Xiaoheng would probably not admit his pain in front of others. No matter how painful it was, they would only hide it in their hearts. Hua Xiaoheng swam in the sea with Gunyanji in his arms for a while. Not long after, they met the speedboat from the research ship. "Major General Hua. We finally found you." The person on the speedboat was a member of the Special Operations Forces who had come with Hua Xiaoheng. He looked like he was really about to cry. Hua Xiaoheng grabbed the side of the boat and pushed Gunyanji up first. He asked calmly, "Where are the others? Did they all go back?" "They all went back. Only you and Miss Gu are left. We saw that there was suddenly a fire over there. The blue-purple electric light was so scary. They were afraid that Major General Hua and Miss Gu would be buried in the buoy circle. When they saw the blue-purple electric light, several members of the Special Operations Forces jumped off the research ship and wanted to go back to the buoy circle to save Hua Xiaoheng and Gunyanji." The man wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes with the back of his hand and reached out to drag Hua Xiaoheng up. He then contacted the research ship and said that Major General Hua and Miss Gu had been found. Through the communicator they could also hear the cheers from the research ship. Hua Xiaoheng calmly picked up the communicator and said to Colonel Liu on the research ship, "Thank you for your hard work. We will return immediately." The speedboat quickly took them back to the research ship. Song Jining hurried over to them. She held Hua Xiaoheng with one hand and Gunyanji with the other. She looked them over and asked worriedly, "Are you hurt?" The people who had returned earlier all had varying degrees of injuries. Gunyanji and Hua Xiaoheng were the last to return, so Song Jining was worried that their injuries were even more serious. Gunyanji quickly said, "I'm not injured, not at all. Major General Hua protected me very well. However, Major General Hua was electrocuted over there, so we have to send him back to the base hospital for a thorough examination." "Is it inside the buoy circle?" Song Jining's heart suddenly sank. That was where the high-voltage electric field was concentrated. Gunyanji nodded. She knew what Song Jining was worried about and quickly explained, "But we were lucky and managed to escape before the violet lightning appeared, so the shock Major General Hua received shouldn't be too serious." Hua Xiaoheng said directly, "I'm fine. That little electric shock is nothing." Song Jining breathed a sigh of relief and patted Hua Xiaoheng's shoulder. "It's good that you're fine, but don't let your guard down. We'll send you back to the base with a speedboat later." Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "I'll go right away." He glanced at Gunyanji and didn't say anything else. He went back to the cabin to change clothes. Because they all had varying degrees of injuries, they wouldn't stay on the scientific research ship. They would be sent back to the Special Operations Forces Sea City base on a speedboat with Hong Kongquan. Song Jining held Gunyanji's hand and asked worriedly, "Are you really okay? Why don't you go back with them for a checkup?" Gunyanji thought about it. "Then will you go back with us?" Song Jining shook her head. "I won't go for the time being." She looked at the violet lightning between the sea and the sky, frowned and said, "I haven't figured out what's going on with that violet lightning. Nature is really amazing. We researchers may not be able to understand 1/10,000th of the magic of nature even if we work hard for a lifetime." Gunyanji, she really didn't believe that Song Jining didn't know what was going on. However, Song Jining looked puzzled, so Gunyanji couldn't say anything more. She went back to the cabin to change clothes. Song Jining continued to stay with the scientific research ship to observe the violet lightning. At the same time, she sent a message back to the imperial capital's military headquarters, saying that a magical blue hole had suddenly appeared between the waters of Sea City and the Sea of Japan. It was really puzzling that it carried its own lightning. Gu Nianji followed Hua Xiaoheng back to the Special Operations Forces base in Sea City. This was where she had lived for 6 years. Returning here was like a fish in water, very comfortable. She slept in the bedroom she had lived in from the age of 12 to 18. It was a full 24 hours of sleep. When she woke up, she felt 100 times more energetic, and her physical strength had finally been fully restored. Hua Xiaoheng also slept for nearly 20 hours. The trip to and from the buoy circle had consumed a lot of their energy. When Gu Nianji sat in the dining room, it was spring outside and the sun was shining brightly. It was lunchtime and she slowly drank a bowl of sea cucumber and red dates millet porridge. Hua Xiaoheng walked in and turned on the wall-mounted TV in the dining room. He sat across from her and nodded at her. "Did you sleep well? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Gu Nianji shook her head. "I'm just tired. I'm fine now that I've had enough sleep." She asked Hua Xiaoheng, "What do you want to eat? The kitchen is making my favorite food." Hua Xiaoheng took the bowl and chopsticks in front of her. "I'll eat whatever you eat." Gu Nianji pursed her lips and smiled slightly. She lowered her head to take a sip of the porridge and stroked her hair that hung down to her ear with one hand. Her freshly washed hair was still a little wet. Gu Nianji glanced at the TV as she ate the porridge. The noon news was playing on the TV. The serious-looking female anchor suddenly said, "Now we have an important piece of news that has just been received. The Japanese government has protested to the Wuxia government, claiming that the recent appearance of the blue hole with lightning between the waters of Sea City and the Sea of Japan was the work of the Wuxia Empire. The purpose is to frame the 200 elite frogmen of the Japanese Marine Corps trapped in the blue hole." Gu Nianji glanced at Hua Xiaoheng. "What's going on?" Hua Xiaoheng ate his lunch and said after a while, "General Ji called me to ask what's going on." Gu Nianji's heart tightened. "What did you say?" Hua Xiaoheng didn't look at her and said calmly, "Of course I told the truth." Gu Nianji felt even more bitter. She silently put down the soup and stood up to leave. When she walked past Hua Xiaoheng, he grabbed her wrist. "Where are you going?" "Pack your things and turn yourself in," Gu Nianji said angrily. "I've caused a diplomatic dispute. Turn myself in for what?" Hua Xiaoheng pulled her over and sat her on his lap. "This is obviously the work of nature. What does it have to do with you?" Gu Nianji felt like she was alive again. She asked in surprise, "Did you really tell General Ji that?" "Yes. I said it very clearly. I don't know what happened. I almost died in there. If I hadn't run fast enough, would General Ji have also gone to Japan to protest?" Hua Xiaoheng took Gu Nianji's bowl of porridge and scooped a spoonful of porridge to her mouth. "Open your mouth." Gu Nianji couldn't help opening her mouth and he fed her a mouthful. "What did General Ji say?" General Ji understood and didn't ask any more questions. Hua Xiaoheng wiped her mouth with a tissue. Gu Nianji came to her senses. "Don't treat me like a child." She sat next to Hua Xiaoheng, took the porridge bowl and continued eating. At that moment, the spokesperson for the Wuxia Empire's Ministry of Foreign Affairs appeared on the television, answering questions from Japanese reporters. She pointed to the bluish-purple electric buoy circle that appeared on the live screen and said, "Sir, the Japanese government really thinks too highly of us. This is clearly the work of nature. It's a natural phenomenon. Our research ship has already sailed to the scene for scientific research. If you insist that it's man-made, it's very difficult for us. This blame is too heavy for us to bear." Of course, the Japanese reporter was dissatisfied and asked repeatedly, "How can you say that? We still have more than 200 frogman soldiers trapped there." The spokesperson for the Wuxia Empire's Ministry of Foreign Affairs was even more amused. She spread her hands and said, "India once thought that the Venus star that appeared over their country was a drone from the Wuxia Empire. They thought that we were monitoring them and repeatedly protested to our Ministry of Defense. We explained many times but they didn't listen. In the end we had to say that if you think it's a drone you can shoot it down. If you can shoot it down then we lose." In the end, India spent a lot of effort to figure out that it was a star in the sky. The star that we Wuxia people call Venus was not a drone from the Wuxia Empire. The same principle is applied to Japan. Don't blame natural phenomena on us. You have to be responsible for your own country's soldiers. Think about why they appeared there. As far as I know, it's not Japan's territorial waters." The spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs poked at the Japanese reporter. "It was the second watch. It was the third watch today. Everyone hurry up and vote for your guaranteed monthly votes. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the third watch. P.S. It's true that India identified Venus as our drone. It's not a joke. Chapter 1107. The Japanese reporter wanted to ask more questions, but the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had already looked past him and directly at the other reporters. Next. Gu Nianji propped her head on her hand and sat in the dining room of Hua Xiaoheng's official residence in Sea City. She smiled as she watched the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs answer the reporter's questions. She said slowly, "It's a pity that Bai Shuang was also the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs back then. I don't know where she is now." Hua Xiaoheng thought of Zhao Liangzi, who had been exiled by him. His hands paused and he said, "I heard she went abroad." Gu Nianji nodded. She was just casually sighing. She wasn't familiar with Bai Shuang, but she remembered that the two of them had some interaction in the past. Bai Shuang's words were sharper than the current spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Gu Nianji liked Bai Shuang's style more. After the two of them finished lunch, Hua Xiaoheng stood up and said, "You pack your things. We'll take a private plane back to the imperial capital in the afternoon." Gu Nianji agreed and asked, "What about Ms. Song?" "She will stay here for a while to do scientific research." Hua Xiaoheng curled his lips and turned to leave the dining room. Their private plane arrived at the imperial capital airport at 6 o'clock in the evening. As soon as they got off the plane, General Ji actually personally came to pick them up. Of course, Hong Kongquan was also escorted back. He had been unconscious the entire way, so it was easy to transport and there wouldn't be any problems. As soon as General Ji saw Hua Xiaoheng, he quickly looked him up and down. After confirming that he was really fine, he sighed and said, "You can even escape the wonders of nature. You are indeed a lucky general of our army." Hua Xiaoheng, Gu Nianji was almost twitching from trying to hold back her laughter. She lowered her head and hurriedly wanted to slip away first. Unexpectedly, General Ji also saw her. He coughed and said, "Nianji, you didn't listen to me and secretly ran to Sea City. Xiaoheng, you must punish her." Hua Xiaoheng, Gu Nianji stopped in her tracks and corrected General Ji with embarrassment. "I didn't sneak away. I'm going in an above-board manner." "Openly? Then why did Director Song stay in Sea City to study the wonders of nature, but you ran back alone?" General Ji deliberately argued with Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji said confidently, "I'm just a temporary assistant to Director Song. The uncanny workmanship of nature is a profound knowledge that I, as a temporary worker, don't understand. Therefore Director Song asked me to come back." She also asked the doctoral students and postdocs in her institute to go to Sea City to be her official assistants. General Ji glared at Gu Nianji for a while before laughing. Fine. I can't out-talk you. I finally understand why Speaker Long insisted that you go to the Senate. Your eloquence can only flourish in the Senate." Gu Nianji spread her hands in a serious manner and said, "General Ji, I like the law. As for the parliament, I'm just a legal advisor. I don't understand politics." "I don't understand either." General Ji grinned. "Let's go back. Both of you are coming with me to the Senate. Speaker Long is going to announce the name of the elected Prime Minister tonight." Gu Nianji was also shocked. "The results aren't out yet." It was already 2 days away from the polling for the interim election. Hua Xiaoheng was also surprised, but he didn't show it on his face like Gu Nianji. He followed General Ji to the car and asked calmly, "Was there a problem with the vote counting?" General Ji pointed at the car calmly. "Let's talk in the car." The three of them got in the car and Gu Nianji automatically sat next to the driver. General Ji and Hua Xiaoheng sat in the back and talked. "The Special Operations Forces did a great job again this time." General Ji laughed. Yin Shixiang monitored the election and discovered some voting fraud. Then he removed the radish and brought out the mud. He discovered the voting fraud from the previous round. After comparing the two, Speaker Long decided to postpone the announcement of the winner and instructed that the votes from the 2 rounds must be recalculated. Gu Nianji also heard it from the front seat, but she didn't feel anything. She didn't get along with the previous 2 prime ministers anyway. If it was still Tan Dongbang this time, her entry into the Senate would probably be difficult. Even if she could enter, she didn't want to. It was meaningless and she didn't want to fight to the death with such a person. However, Hua Xiaoheng knew that it was because they found the 4 lines of AI programming language. During the last election, Hong Kongquan took advantage of Hua Xiaoheng's absence and used the election as an excuse to send people to take over the central control room. Then he took the opportunity to insert the 4 lines of AI programming language into their surveillance system. So there must have been fraud in the last election. General Ji tapped his hand on his knee and was very curious. I wonder who won this time. Gu Nianji pouted and looked at the old dark army green flight jacket she was wearing. She didn't really want to wear that to attend such a big event at the Senate. She shifted in the front seat and fidgeted. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at her and said to General Ji, "Chief, what time will the winner be announced tonight?" General Ji looked at his watch. "It's scheduled for 8 p.m. There are still 2 hours. Hua Xiaoheng stretched his long legs. "Let's go back to the official residence first and hand Hong Kongquan over to Zhou Qiyuan before going to the Senate. Otherwise I won't be able to rest easy." General Ji nodded. "That's good. I didn't think it through. Remember not to let Hong Kongquan escape again this time." Hua Xiaoheng smiled lightly. "He hasn't woken up since he fell into my hands. How can he escape? There was no need to break his legs. Just let him lie there." General Ji laughed loudly. "Why is Hong Kongquan's body so weak? He can't even make it through a long flight." Gu Nianji lowered her head and smiled. She was secretly happy. She could go back and change her clothes. The private car drove into the Special Operations Forces headquarters in the imperial capital. The guards at the door excitedly saluted Hua Xiaoheng. "Hello, Chief." Although they hadn't seen each other for only a few days, everyone missed him very much. He was their pillar of strength. Hua Xiaoheng raised his hand. "Thank you for your hard work." The car drove into the headquarters of the Special Operations Forces, and Hua Xiaoheng first handed Hong Kongquan over to Zhou Qiyuan. He reminded him, "We lost a colleague this time before we managed to catch him. Remember not to let him escape again. There are still many mysteries about him. It's not time for him to die yet." "Don't worry, Chief. I will personally guard him." Zhou Qiyuan stood at attention and saluted. Hua Xiaoheng patted him on the shoulder to show that he trusted him. Gu Nianji returned to Hua Xiaoheng's official residence alone and entered her room. She first went to the bathroom to take a quick shower. When she came out, she dried her hair with a hairdryer and went to the closet to find suitable clothes. Considering that today was the day the Senate would announce the election of the Prime Minister, Gu Nianji chose a more mature Chanel suit that didn't make her look too delicate. She wore a light cherry blossom pink fleece jacket with a ruffled collar and a thin wool skirt of the same color. Inside the jacket, she chose a white silk blouse with a straight collar and a pair of Christian Louboutin black calfskin high heels with red soles. She was mature, dignified, and passionate. It was very suitable for her status. After her hair was dried, she didn't comb it into a bun. Instead, she let it fall down her back and secured it with a diamond headpiece. She lightly brushed a layer of rouge on her face and put on some light makeup with a touch of lipstick. Hua Xiaoheng changed into his Major General uniform and picked her up to go to the Senate building. However, once they arrived at the Senate building, the two of them split up. Hua Xiaoheng spoke with General Ji outside while Gu Nianji first went in alone to find Special Assistant Zhuang and sit with the Senate staff. Gu Nianji's gaze swept across the large, scallop-shaped conference hall and saw that Tan Guirin was dressed like a little princess and sitting between Kai Songyin and Tan Dongbang. Meanwhile, Bai Jianqing and Bai Yueran sat on the other side of the Tans. There was only a narrow hallway between the two families. Tan Dongbang had a smug smile on his face the entire time and only changed color when he saw Hua Xiaoheng and General Ji walk in together. It was the third watch. It was the third watch today. Everyone hurry up and vote for your guaranteed monthly votes. Moi everyone. Chapter 1108. Tan Dongbang's expression changed very quickly, and he instantly regained his cheerful expression. He nodded politely at General Ji and Hua Xiaoheng who had just entered. General Ji and Hua Xiaoheng both nodded in return. They didn't seem displeased at all. Tan Dongbang breathed a sigh of relief and told himself to stay calm and not panic. Kai Songyin saw Hua Xiaoheng walk in and quickly nudged Tan Guirin. She pouted at Hua Xiaoheng and whispered, "Look, he really did break up with that little orphan girl." Tan Guirin turned her head and saw that Hua Xiaoheng's gaze seemed to be on her. She immediately blushed and lowered her eyes to whisper, "Mommy, don't talk about Miss Gu like that. Although Miss Gu doesn't have parents, she's very capable on her own." Thinking about how Gu Nianji had let her parents go and didn't sue them, she had a good impression of Gu Nianji. Moreover, Gu Nianji had broken up with Hua Xiaoheng, so Tan Guirin no longer had any negative feelings towards Gu Nianji. On the contrary, she sympathized with her. He had grown up being doted on by his parents, so he was much happier than Gu Nianji, who was living under someone else's roof. When a person thinks that he is lucky and others are unlucky, he will be more tolerant of people and things. Kai Songyin patted Tan Guirin's head kindly. "Little darling, you're just too kind and kind. In your eyes, are there no bad people in this world?" Tan Guiran thought about it seriously and said, There are bad people in our little darling's eyes. Kai Songyin was both curious and amused. What kind of people are bad people in little darling's eyes? The person who kidnapped me in New York last time, Tan Guiran said quietly after a moment of silence. Tan Guiran couldn't help but shiver when she recalled those days where she didn't see the light of day. The smile on Kai Songyin's face faded bit by bit. Her heart ached as she held Tan Guiran's hand and comforted her quietly. Little darling, don't think about it anymore. No one else in the world knows what happened to you in New York. Everyone who knows is no longer in this world. Tan Guiran was shocked. What? But Major General Hua and the others knew. They personally came to save me. Kai Songyin choked. Her eyelids drooped as she snorted in disdain. That's different. He only brought people to rescue you, but he doesn't know what happened during the month you were kidnapped. Pausing, Kai Songyin moved closer to Tan Guiran's ear and whispered in a voice that only the two of them could hear. Mommy has been holding back from saying this. You have to remember that although you were kidnapped for a month, no one touched you. You're still a virgin. Do you understand? Kai Songyin didn't want to agitate Tan Guiran, so she avoided talking about it. But she had to say it now because once Tan Guiran got married, this matter couldn't be avoided. Tan Guiran was just about to say, I was. Kai Songyin continued, It doesn't matter if your testicles are gone. Mommy knows a very skilled surgeon who can repair your testicles. She can even perform tightening surgery for you. When you get married, your husband can guarantee that he won't feel any difference. Tan Guiran's face flushed immediately. She smiled wryly at Kai Songyin. Mommy, so that's what you're worried about? I'm telling you, I'm really still a virgin. Although I was kidnapped for a month, one of the kidnappers treated me quite well. Kai Songyin couldn't believe her ears. What? You're really still? In her eyes, her daughter was beautiful and had a great figure. The kidnappers would be blind not to touch her. In the minds of most people, as long as a kidnapped woman wasn't particularly ugly, she usually couldn't escape being raped. Even if there were some lucky ones, most of them were rescued in a timely manner. So regardless of whether you were really raped or not, in some people's minds, you were no longer chaste. Of course, Tan Guiran didn't understand this kind of general opinion. She only stubbornly said, I really didn't. I'm still a virgin. If you don't believe me, we can go to the hospital tomorrow for a checkup. Kai Songyin finally believed her and couldn't help but be overjoyed. She held Tan Guiran's hand and said, My little darling is truly blessed. One who survives a disaster is bound to have good fortune. You'll definitely marry well. Xiaoheng might be blind, but other people aren't. Tan Guiran shyly hung her head, feeling a bit lost. Really? Did she really have the fortune and opportunity to marry someone better than Major General Hua? The mother and daughter were whispering to each other, so no one noticed the tiny beads of sweat seeping out of Tan Dongbang's forehead. Tan Dongbang had already wiped it several times with a handkerchief, but he still couldn't stop sweating. His heart was pounding like something was about to happen. He originally thought he could still turn the tables this time, but seeing that Hua Xiaoheng had actually returned unscathed, he suddenly felt that he wasn't so sure anymore. Soon it was 8 o'clock sharp. The time was up. The large conference hall quieted down. 7 or 8 cameras were pointed at the podium, waiting for Speaker Long to go on stage to announce the results of the election. The results of the Wuxia Empire's interim election were not only broadcasted live throughout the country, but many overseas television stations were also broadcasting this major news. Speaker Long wore a navy tuxedo with a small bow tie and walked up to the podium in high spirits. He held 2 envelopes in his hands and nodded to everyone present first. Ladies and gentlemen, to all the viewers in front of your televisions, good day. Today is the day of the Wuxia Empire's interim election for the Prime Minister. I would like to thank all of our staff for their blood, sweat, and hard work for this interim election. The voting results for this election were actually out 2 days ago, but because we discovered some election fraud, we conducted multiple recounts to ensure that the number of votes was accurate. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone became restless. Election fraud. This was election fraud with the speaker's seal. Who was the one cheating? Everyone's eyes turned to Bai Jianqing and Tan Dongbang. In this interim election, only the 2 of them had the right to be on the ballot. The expression on Bai Jianqing's face didn't change at all. He was calm and steady, and it was obvious that he was a very reliable person who had been through a lot. However, Tan Dongbang was different. Although he was also trying his best to maintain a smile, it was incredibly stiff. Also, through the high-definition camera feed, everyone could see that his forehead was glistening with oil, and fine beads of sweat continuously seeped out. This was interesting. On the podium, Speaker Long's gaze also lingered on Tan Dongbang and Bai Jianqing for a while. He lowered his head and took out the election results from the first envelope. Speaker Long said into the microphone, "Because of the cheating in the second election, we also had doubts about the results of the first election because the initial change in the number of votes was exactly the same in both elections. Therefore we recalculated the results of the first election." Everyone was instantly in an uproar. It turned out that this interim election had dragged on for 2 days because the first election results from a few months ago had also been recalculated. Hua Xiaoheng and General Ji had known about this a long time ago, but the public was only learning about it for the first time. At this moment, the Wuxia Empire's television and internet instantly exploded. Countless people were posting the hashtag what exactly happened during the first election hashtag. Tan Dongbang's heart was so weak that he felt like he was about to float. No way? The first time. How did they know? Even Kai Songyin was stunned. She quickly glanced at Tan Dongbang and saw that he was also looking at her. The husband and wife quickly looked away as if nothing had happened, but they were both scheming in their hearts. Tan Dongbang thought about it. During the first election, Kai Songyin had said that they had an expert helping them and that they would definitely win. This expert had personally contacted him the second time, so the results didn't count? Kai Songyin was thinking about how Hong Kongquan had guaranteed for her during the first election and said that Tan Dongbang would definitely be elected. He had an expert helping them. Could it be that this expert had been exposed along with Hong Kongquan's arrest? Kai Songyin didn't know anything about the expert personally contacting Tan Dongbang during the second election. She didn't have any confidence in the second election at all, so she didn't know where Tan Dongbang's confidence came from. Speaker Long began to read the results of the first voting on the podium. According to the election law, the elected prime minister must win more than half of all votes and must win more than half of the provinces. There are a total of 34 provinces in the Wuxia Empire. In other words, the elected prime minister must win at least 18 provinces and must win more than half of the individual votes. As everyone knows, in the first election a few months ago, a total of 97,563,421 votes were cast. Mr. Tan Dongbang won in 18 provinces and won a total of 48,782,221 votes. He was only 2,021 more votes than the runner-up, Mr. Bai Jianqing, and was elected Prime Minister of the Wuxia Empire. However, during the recount, we discovered that there were problems with the counting of votes in 2 provinces. The votes that clearly belonged to Mr. Bai Jianqing were recorded as Mr. Tan Dongbang's votes. In the end, there was a major error in the results. After the recount, the results of the first election are as follows. A total of 97,563,421 votes were cast. Mr. Bai Jianqing won in 18 provinces and won a total of 48,782,221 votes. He was only 2,021 more votes than the runner-up, Mr. Tan Dongbang. Mr. Bai Jianqing is the Prime Minister of the Wuxia Empire who should have won the first election. Tan Dongbang was furious as he listened and couldn't help but interrupt Speaker Long. "Speaker Long, what do you mean? It's been so long since the first election, and now you're saying that there was a problem with the counting of votes? Who can prove that there was a problem with the counting of votes, or that you changed the results again?" Tan Dongbang's accusation was echoed by many people who didn't know the truth. Indeed, Speaker Long only announced the results of the recount. Just saying, the votes that belonged to Mr. Bai Jianqing were recorded as Mr. Tan Dongbang's votes, wasn't enough to convince everyone. Speaker Long stood on the podium and didn't say anything. He only looked at Tan Dongbang quietly. The large conference hall was completely silent. Even the faint hum of the central air conditioner seemed to have disappeared. This was the first night watch. It was the third night watch today. Everyone hurry up and vote for your guaranteed monthly votes. The second night watch at 1 in the afternoon and the third night watch at 7 in the evening. P.S. Thank you to President Momo Moshi for your 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Moi. Chapter 1109. Speaker Long's gaze was calm and leisurely. His calm expression even contained a trace of compassion that made Tan Dongbang tremble. Tan Dongbang had never been so panicked ever since he entered the political arena. He had always been calm and collected, gentle and refined. But at some point in time, his image had completely disappeared. What was left for the people of the nation and even the entire world was his ugly behavior in bed. If he lost the position of Prime Minister this time, he would never be able to make a comeback. so he had no other choice but to fight with his life on the line. Tan Dongbang sneered. Speaker Long, why aren't you saying anything? Haven't you thought of an excuse to tarnish my reputation yet? Speaker Long didn't expect Tan Dongbang to throw caution to the wind and openly challenge him in front of everyone and on TV. Special Assistant Zhuang saw this from below the stage, and his expression also darkened. It was public humiliation for Speaker Long to be questioned by Tan Dongbang like this on stage. Even if there was evidence, how could he say it at this time and place? He was extremely anxious and wanted to help Speaker Long out of the situation, but now that everyone was watching and there were so many cameras pointed at them, no matter what method he used to warn Tan Dongbang would only use it to point the finger at Speaker Long and say that he was trying to manipulate the situation from behind the scenes. No matter how he thought about it, he could only use the law to shut Tan Dongbang's mouth and shut the mouths of everyone who was trying to stir up trouble. Special Assistant Zhuang quickly said to Gunyanji, "Stay here and keep an eye on things. Call me if there's anything. I'm going out for a bit." He went to the small conference room next to the large conference hall and took out his phone book to call the Senate's legal advisors one by one. In the end, whether it was the senior legal advisor or the junior legal advisor, none of them were willing to speak up. Everyone had different reasons, but the result was the same. They all rejected Special Assistant Zhuang's suggestion. Several legal advisors even said, "As a citizen, Prime Minister Tan has the right to know. If Speaker Long doesn't want to lose his credibility in front of the entire nation, he must answer Prime Minister Tan's question." Special Assistant Zhuang was so angry that he didn't know what to do. After thinking for a long time, he thought of Kai Xingnan. Not only was she the future chief legal advisor that Speaker Long had in mind, but she was also Tan Dongbang's niece. With this level of kinship, it should be easier to talk to her, right? Special Assistant Zhuang thought about it and immediately called Kai Xingnan. "Lawyer Kai, can you please persuade Mr. Tan to talk to him tomorrow? I suppose you're watching TV and know what's going on." Kai Xingnan was indeed watching television, and she was watching television with her father, Kai Sumin. She and Kai Sumin were both happy to see something like this happen in the parliament building. Asking her to shut Tan Dongbang up? That was impossible. He was her biological uncle. He had to give her a corresponding benefit before she would go against her biological uncle. However, she couldn't afford to offend Speaker Long either. If she offended Speaker Long, how was she going to survive in the Wuxia Empire in the future? She was going to be the council's chief legal advisor. Therefore, she had an idea and tactfully said, "Special Assistant Zhuang, I want to help you, but my relationship with Mr. Tan as a private legal advisor hasn't been terminated. I still have a contractual relationship with him, so I can't betray my client." Special Assistant Zhuang became even more anxious. "Lawyer Kai, didn't you say you wanted to come to the Senate as a legal advisor? Speaker Long also appreciates you, so you—" Kai Xingnan smiled confidently and said very warmly, "I've also been looking forward to coming to the Senate to be Speaker Long's chief legal advisor, but I haven't seen the document appointing me. How about this, as long as Special Assistant Zhuang can give me a word and give me the appointment letter of the chief legal advisor after today's live broadcast ends, I'll go to the Senate now and help Speaker Long out." She was seizing the opportunity to ask for an exorbitant price. She dared to ask for the appointment letter of the chief legal advisor, just by asking for her help. "If you're so capable, why don't you go to heaven?" Special Assistant Zhuang was so angry that he hung up the phone. His face was as dark as the bottom of a pot as he angrily sat next to Gunyanji. Gunyanji saw that Special Assistant Zhuang was as angry as a frog after going out to make a phone call, so she quickly brought him a cup of coffee. "Have some coffee to calm yourself down." Special Assistant Zhuang looked up to see Gunyanji and couldn't help complaining to her. "Nyanji, do you law students all like to take advantage of the situation so much?" Gunyanji was speechless. How was she supposed to answer this? She could only smile sheepishly. "Not really. Many law students don't take advantage of the situation. They only want to uphold the justice in their hearts." "Justice? I'm afraid it's not as important as their own fame and fortune." Special Assistant Zhuang sighed and pointed to the stage. "Nyanji, look, Speaker Long is speechless because of Tan Dongbang's words. If we don't talk about it, Tan Dongbang definitely won't let this topic go." On the stage, Speaker Long looked at Tan Dongbang for a while and said, "If Mr. Tan has any objections, we can discuss them in detail after today's election results are announced." "No, you must make it clear now." Tan Dongbang stood up agitatedly. "I can't let you all bury the truth. I also won't accept any under-the-table manipulation results. As expected, Tan Dongbang was already talking about under-the-table manipulation, before Special Assistant Zhuang could remind him. Gu Nianji frowned and said quietly, "Then we have to make him shut up. What about the Senate's legal advisors? Don't tell me there isn't a single one." She knew that Speaker Long wanted to hire legal advisors, but the Senate should have had legal advisors before. It was impossible that there wasn't a single one. "Of course there is," Special Assistant Zhuang said with a bitter expression. "I went out just now to look for them. I called all of them but they wouldn't pick up. They truly had their concerns." Tan Dongbang had hinted to them that he would still be elected this time. And the news these people heard from their own channels was that Tan Dongbang was leading in the votes. How could they know that the situation had already changed? It could only be said that Yin Shixiang's secrecy and smokescreen were too good. He had been instructed by Speaker Long and General Ji to release some false information to the public. He wanted to see who was still hesitant and trying to have a foot in both boats. These people had no principles or bottom lines, so they were exactly the kind of people Speaker Long wanted to remove from the Senate. Gu Nianji listened to Special Assistant Zhuang's complaints and hesitated before volunteering with a red face. "Special Assistant Zhuang, if you think it's possible, do you need me to come on stage and help Speaker Long out?" "You?" Special Assistant Zhuang looked at Gu Nianji with surprise. "Nianji, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but this matter requires very advanced legal knowledge and political literacy to resolve. Only knowing the law and only knowing politics won't be able to help Speaker Long out. The legal advisors employed by the Senate should have been able to do the job, but they were all calculating their own interests and were unwilling to offend the future Prime Minister, so there was nothing he could do." Special Assistant Zhuang didn't study law. At that moment he even wanted to call Special Assistant Yang, who was on leave, over to help Speaker Long out. However, Gu Nianji could tell that Speaker Long didn't need anyone to help him out. He clearly had a card up his sleeve. However, she had to admit that Tan Dongbang's actions were a bit outrageous. Speaker Long's awkward appearance on the podium made Gu Nianji feel pity for him. Also, she was worried about what if Tan Dongbang made a comeback. Although the possibility was very low, who knew? You couldn't guess the minds of the voters. You wouldn't understand no matter how you tried. Gu Nianji also felt uneasy when she thought about the results of the American election this time. No, she couldn't give Tan Dongbang a chance to make a comeback. Even if he did, she had to suppress him. Gu Nianji grabbed Special Assistant Zhuang's arm. "Let me go. Even if I say something wrong, you can go up and help him out again. Just say I'm an intern. It's fine even if I say something wrong." "Can you really do it?" Special Assistant Zhuang was tempted because he really had no other choice. Perhaps Speaker Long truly admired Gu Nianji and was grooming her as his successor. Special Assistant Zhuang swore that as long as Gu Nianji completely suppressed Tan Dongbang this time, he would definitely recommend Gu Nianji to Speaker Long to be the chief legal advisor. As for those experienced legal advisors and Kai Xingnan, the great American lawyer who only knew how to curry favor, they all had to step aside. Gu Nianji stood up with a serious expression. "I can't let him be arrogant anymore. I'm going to attack him." It was the second watch. It was the third watch. "Everyone hurry up and vote for your guaranteed monthly votes." It was 7 o'clock in the evening, the third watch. P.S. There was originally a large section that I hadn't written, but seeing that the update time was up, I didn't want everyone to wait too long, so I posted it first. You can see Nianji attacking Prime Minister Tan at the third watch. Moi. Chapter 11:10. Gu Nianji hung the badge that proved she was a Senate staff member around her neck and straightened her sleeves before walking out of the Senate staff seats. The military police responsible for maintaining order were all Hua Xiaoheng and the Special Operations Forces personnel. They were slightly surprised to see Gu Nianji but didn't act like they were familiar with her. They blocked her way in a businesslike manner and said, "You can't go up to the podium as you please." Gu Nianji showed him her badge with a smile. "I'm Speaker Long's staff member. I have something to say to Speaker Long." The person walked closer to check Gu Nianji's badge. His lips moved a few times before he said in a very quiet voice, "Don't go up. It's very troublesome." Gu Nianji blinked at the person to indicate it was fine. The person stepped aside and watched with worry as she walked up to the podium. Gu Nianji walked to Speaker Long's side and acutely sensed that Speaker Long was actually very nervous. Thinking about it carefully, it was obvious that Tan Dongbang was shameless and wasn't afraid no matter how much trouble he caused, but Speaker Long could lose his political career if he wasn't careful. Even if Hua Xiaoheng was standing there, he probably wouldn't be the least bit nervous, right? Gu Nianji's mind quickly turned and she already thought of a countermeasure. She discovered that she wasn't nervous at all in this kind of situation. It was as if she was born here and belonged on this stage. However, thinking about it again, perhaps she wanted Tan Dongbang to completely step down, so she didn't have the time to be nervous. Speaker Long saw that Gu Nianji had arrived and looked at her inquiringly. Gu Nianji nodded at him and pointed to the first envelope in Speaker Long's hand. It was the one that Speaker Long had just announced about the recount of Tan Dongbang's votes in the first election. Speaker Long instantly understood and smiled slightly. He winked at her and signaled for her to let go and fight Tan Dongbang. It had to be said that Gu Nianji's arrival relieved the pressure on Speaker Long. He was prepared to expose the fraud in the two elections at an event like today, but he wasn't prepared to openly fight with someone. In other words, it would be beneath his status whether he could win or not at an event like today. Tan Dongbang, on the other hand, would be willing to sacrifice himself to bring the emperor down. He wouldn't care if he was beneath his status. The people below the stage were very surprised to see a beautiful young woman suddenly walk onto the stage. General Ji and Hua Xiaoheng exchanged a look and saw confusion in each other's eyes. You don't know what she's going to do? General Ji frowned. This isn't a normal occasion. How can she be so bold? The corners of Hua Xiaoheng's lips curled up, and a faint smile appeared on his face as he said leisurely, "You've spoiled her rotten." General Ji. Can't you speak properly? I'm already so old, yet I still have to eat dog food. How tiring. General Ji turned away from Hua Xiaoheng and stared at Gu Nianji on the podium in a daze. Kai Songyin and Tan Gairen's eyes widened when they saw Gu Nianji walk up to the podium. They had no idea what she was going to do. Tan Dongbang was so excited that his face and neck were red. When he saw Gu Nianji walk up to the podium, he was so excited that his hands were about to twitch. There were even more people who didn't know Gu Nianji. They were all whispering to each other, trying to figure out who this outrageously beautiful young girl was. Needless to say, the audience in front of their televisions, from the Huaxia Empire and overseas, all the people watching the live broadcast were very interested in her. The number of online searches about her was increasing rapidly. Countless people were searching for the name, Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji still didn't know that she had already caused such a huge stir on the internet. She had never attended an event like this before, so she didn't know what it meant to be broadcast with global attention. She truly walked up to the podium with the attitude of a newborn calf who wasn't afraid of tigers and appeared in front of the entire world. Gu Nianji looked at Tan Dongbang, who had stood up below the stage, and said calmly, "Mr. Tan, please watch your words. If you need to file a complaint, please go through the legal process. Don't obstruct the normal proceedings of today's meeting." Tan Dongbang was waiting for someone to argue with him. He prided himself on his unparalleled debating skills, and during the first election, he had relied on his sharp tongue to make Bai Jianqing speechless time and time again. He had gained a lot of fans. Today he had originally planned to directly argue with Speaker Long and let the entire world know that Speaker Long was old and should retire. He couldn't continue to enjoy his position without doing anything. This would also clear the way for him to work in the future. In the end, Speaker Long didn't respond and refused to argue with him. Fortunately, Gu Nianji, who wasn't afraid of death, had come, so she couldn't blame him for being impolite. With his qualifications as a lawyer and the Minister of Justice, it was more than enough to beat Gu Nianji. Tan Dongbang sneered as he crossed his arms and said calmly, "Watch my words? May I ask who you are? What right do you have to talk to me?" Gu Nianji's eyes curved and her youthful voice was a bit soft, like malt candy made during the New Year. It was so sweet and soft, but it stuck to the teeth. She said calmly, "I am a staff member of the Senate, and I am responsible for maintaining the normal proceedings of the General Assembly. Mr. Tan, everyone is equal before the law. You are the Prime Minister elected by the people, and you are supposed to serve the people. However, you act all high and mighty in front of a staff member like me, and you don't even want to talk to me properly. I think the voters who voted for you will be very disappointed in you if they see you like this." She calmly changed the topic to the voters Tan Dongbang cared about the most. She wanted to completely suppress Tan Dongbang's arrogance. Because if she didn't do this, Tan Dongbang wouldn't treat her as an equal to talk to. If Tan Dongbang continued to maintain his high and mighty attitude, the audience would subjectively think that Tan Dongbang was more qualified than Gu Nianji and was more reasonable. As the saying went, it wasn't the louder one spoke, but in politics sometimes people would think you were reasonable if you spoke louder. Gu Nianji wouldn't give Tan Dongbang that opportunity. Tan Dongbang immediately reacted and composed himself. He coughed and said, Fine then, I won't lower myself to your level. What I want is Speaker Long's attitude and it has nothing to do with you. You can leave. Gu Nianji shook her head and smiled wholeheartedly. Mr. Tan, you are not my superior, so you have no right to order me to do or not do anything. I have already reminded you twice and this is the third time. Please watch your words and don't break the law, and especially don't obstruct the established procedures of the General Assembly. Tan Dongbang didn't expect Gu Nianji to stay on the podium and refused to leave. He was also angry. Didn't you want me to watch my words? Then let me ask you which of my words broke the law. Tan Dongbang put down his arms and walked out of his seat to walk to the podium. He looked up at Gu Nianji and said, You keep telling me to watch my words, so let me ask you which of my words were inappropriate. Or did I break the law? Gu Nianji stopped smiling and looked at the audience. She said sternly, You don't even remember what you said? How can you be competent as the Prime Minister with such a terrible memory? Tan Dongbang almost couldn't breathe from Gu Nianji's words. The corners of his mouth twitched and after a long time he finally said, Of course I remember every word I said. But I don't know which of my words broke the law. Am I not a citizen? Am I not worthy to know? Is Speaker Long really going to cover up the entire election? Am I supposed to be at the mercy of others? It had to be said that Tan Dongbang's words were quite provocative. No wonder he was able to become the Prime Minister. Gu Nianji smiled faintly as she listened to Tan Dongbang's string of parallelism. She said eloquently, Okay then I'll say it. Your first sentence that broke the law was that you said Speaker Long hadn't thought of an excuse to tarnish your reputation. That sentence is already considered slander. Isn't that illegal? Tan Dongbang thought about it carefully and realized he really had been too impulsive. From a legal perspective, such subjective and hypothetical words couldn't be said openly. Once said, he would have to bear legal responsibility. He immediately said, That's because I was too angry. There have been many people trying to slander me recently, so I was just warning those who tried to do so. Then you admit that you were angry and publicly slandered Speaker Long? Gu Nianji advanced step by step and set a trap for Tan Dongbang. Tan Dongbang suddenly felt very awkward. If he admitted it, then his earlier victim attitude would be for nothing. But if he didn't admit it, then he would have to produce evidence to prove that Speaker Long was trying to slander him. Both choices would push him into the abyss. Tan Dongbang didn't want to choose either, so he could only glare angrily at Gu Nianji and grit his teeth. Gu Nianji calmly looked around the entire conference room and said, The second sentence, you said that you couldn't let us bury the truth. You also wouldn't accept any results of under-the-table manipulation. This sentence labeled the entire election as under-the-table manipulation, without any evidence. Are you trying to overturn the results of the entire election? What's more, such a serious accusation definitely can't be made from just one sentence from you. May I ask if you have any evidence to prove your view of under-the-table manipulation? Tan Dongbang was eager to divert everyone's attention away from the first question, so he quickly said, This sentence is a warning. I made it very clear that I don't accept the results of the under-the-table manipulations, not the results of the election. As long as the election was fair, open and fair, how could I not accept it? Is that so? Gu Nianji nodded slightly and quickly asked, Then if the results of the election weren't yours, would you still accept it? Impossible. If the results of the election weren't mine, then it must have been. Tan Dongbang almost blurted out what was on his mind, but he finally stopped himself at the last moment. Gu Nianji followed up with another attack. Then it must have been the results of our under-the-table manipulation, right? So from Mr. Tan's point of view, only if you were elected would it be an open, fair election. Otherwise, it would all be under-the-table manipulation, wouldn't it? Everyone in the conference room roared with laughter, and the audience watching the live broadcast in front of the TV also laughed. So Prime Minister Tan's so-called under-the-table manipulation meant that anyone who didn't choose him was under-the-table manipulation? This was the biggest joke in the world. It was the third watch. It was the third watch today. Everyone hurry up and vote for your guaranteed monthly votes. Good night, my dears. Chapter 11:11. Tan Dongbang's expression changed, and his hands clenched into fists. If they weren't on stage and he wasn't off stage, he really would have thrown a punch. It was obvious how much Gu Nianji had angered Tan Dongbang to be able to make a self-proclaimed, cultured and refined person throw a punch at her. Kai Songyin and Tan Guoren were both dumbfounded by what they saw. Mommy, what's going on with Daddy? Can't you let Speaker Long finish? Tan Guoren was at a loss. but she also felt that her daddy's words made sense. How could he say someone cheated just because they cheated? He had to at least give a reason, right? Kai Songyin, on the other hand, had a guilty conscience. She knew that the first time was fishy, but she felt that it wasn't that far off. After all, she was quite experienced in media publicity. She hadn't earned her reputation as a she-devil in the media for so many years for nothing. Yes, it's so embarrassing. Kai Songyin pouted. She truly planned to divorce Tan Dongbang once this farce was over, and she was sure he couldn't make a comeback. They were childhood friends and years of love, but their feelings had been completely eroded when they saw the video of Tan Dongbang fooling around with Gu Yanran. Kai Songyin looked at Tan Dongbang's back as he stood below the podium and was very impatient. She didn't understand why Tan Dongbang still hadn't given up. However, Tan Dongbang glared at Gu Yanji, who was standing beside Speaker Long on the podium. He was extremely regretful for his slip of the tongue. Fortunately, he hadn't said it. Although Gu Yanji had taken advantage of the situation, Tan Dongbang still denied it and seized on the loophole in Gu Yanji's words. Haha, Miss Gu, you're also a lawyer, right? Didn't you learn in school that you can't frame someone for something they didn't say? Tan Dongbang was being shameless. Anyway, he hadn't said the last sentence. Gu Yanji had said it all. Do you know what it means to frame someone if you want to frame them? He was saying that Gu Yanji had purposely made up an excuse to frame him. Gu Yanji had originally wanted to rebuke Tan Dongbang and have him stay quiet. She wanted him to not publicly fight with Speaker Long and save the country some face in front of the people of the world. Tan Dongbang was probably taking advantage of the fact that this was a live broadcast and was certain that the Senate and Speaker Long wanted to save face. They wouldn't be able to violently silence him in front of the entire world, so he was increasingly fearless. Gu Yanji was filled with anger when she thought about this. She had already shown some mercy, but she didn't expect Tan Dongbang to still refuse to let it go. He even wanted to pick on her. Since that was the case, then don't blame me for driving a dog into a dead end. Gu Yanji adjusted the Bluetooth headset she was wearing. The staff of the Senate would always wear a Bluetooth headset during important events to facilitate communication. She put down her hand, her eyes flashing as she said, "When did I frame you? Did you forget what I said just now? What I said was, that must be the result of our secret operation, right? Therefore, from Mr. Tan's point of view, only when you are elected will it be an open, fair election. Otherwise, it's all done behind the scenes, isn't it?" Every sentence is a question. You can answer yes or no. How did I frame you? Mr. Tan, you also studied law and have been the Minister of Justice for many years. How did you get to the position of Minister of Justice with your legal skills? Gu Yanji's tone was mocking, but the expression on her face was incredibly sweet and natural. It made it impossible for anyone to feel ill will just by looking at her face. They only felt that Tan Dongbang was too much to be bossy around a girl who was even younger than his daughter. The corner of Tan Dongbang's mouth twitched. He finally remembered that Gu Yanji was also someone who had been to court before. Whether it was suing Bai Jini for Song Jinning's incident, going to court for the German female exchange student's lawsuit, or fighting Gu Yanran for the family inheritance, she had never lost. He really couldn't underestimate someone like her just because she was young. Tan Dongbang collected his thoughts and began to take Gu Yanji seriously. He adjusted his bow tie, and his expression was much more natural. He immediately brought Gu Yanji back to the topic she had diverted. He said in a low voice, "Since Miss Gu has made things clear, then I will make things clear as well. What I meant just now was that Speaker Long said that there was a problem with the votes last time and that there was cheating. Then please show me the evidence. If you don't have evidence, then don't say that it was cheating last time." Tan Dongbang had to clarify the matter of the cheating last time because he was already feeling vaguely uneasy. Although he had heard the news and that expert had told him that he should have won the second interim election. But why would Speaker Long bring up the matter of the cheating last time? That was truly too puzzling. Tan Dongbang didn't want to sit around and wait for death, so he chose to stand up and fight it out in front of everyone. Unfortunately, Speaker Long didn't respond to him. The person he was fighting with now was a small Senate staff member. Even if he won the argument, he wouldn't have much face left. Tan Dongbang looked at Gu Yanji on the podium with a dark expression. He had already secretly made up his mind that once this storm was over and he returned to his position as Prime Minister, the first person he would severely suppress would be Gu Yanji. Getting rid of her would not only make room for his daughter, but it would also let those people see the consequences of going against him. Gu Yanji had rushed onto the podium. She could suppress Tan Dongbang's arrogance with words, but in terms of election cheating, She really didn't know what the actual situation was. She only knew that Hong Kongquan had stuffed 4 lines of extremely advanced and hard-to-discover AI programming language into the central control room system. These 4 lines of AI programming language had tampered with the system's program to hide some important information. But she wasn't completely clueless. If the cheating in the last election had only been discovered after they dug up these 4 lines of AI programming language, then could she infer that the evidence of the cheating was in the central control system's monitoring software? Gu Nianji began to ponder. Yin Shixiang sat in the temporary monitoring room of the Senate building and stared unblinkingly at Gu Nianji's tall and calm figure on the monitor. He couldn't help but want to help her out. He first contacted Huo Xiaoheng. Huo Xiao, should we give Nianji a heads up? There are some things she doesn't know about. Huo Xiaoheng sat below the podium and slowly nodded. He quietly agreed. Yin Shixiang received authorization and immediately connected to Gu Nianji's Bluetooth headset. He said to her, "Nianji, the evidence is in the central control system." Gu Nianji was just thinking about how to answer Tan Dongbang's incredibly sharp question when the Bluetooth headset in her ears suddenly connected. It was Yin Shixiang's voice speaking to her. Although this sentence was short, it confirmed Gu Nianji's suspicions. Gu Nianji suddenly looked up when she heard Yin Shixiang's words. Her eyes sparkled like stars as she looked at Tan Dongbang. Her plump, curvy lips curled into a happy smile, making her appear even more alluring. She looked at Tan Dongbang with a smile and asked again, "Mr. Tan, do you really need evidence?" "Now." "Immediately?" "Yes, I want to see evidence. Now." "Immediately," Tan Dongbang said resolutely. He looked indignant as if he wanted to clear his name. Gu Nianji looked at Speaker Long and asked quietly, "Speaker Long, what do you think?" Speaker Long nodded expressionlessly. "Since he wants to see evidence, show him the evidence." He then turned on the multimedia operating system on the podium in front of him and gestured for Gu Nianji to act. Gu Nianji received Speaker Long's authorization and felt greatly reassured. She typed a few times on the keyboard and entered the Senate's computer system to connect to Yin Shixiang's surveillance system. Then she slowly put down a huge white screen on the wall behind her. The entire large conference hall looked like a screening room in a movie theater. Gu Nianji found the evidence program that Yin Shixiang had sent her and typed it out on the large screen. "Everyone, this is the evidence we found of cheating in the last election. Please take a look." After a system search, the entire voting situation from the last election is here. Everyone can look at the original voting data from each province and then look at the original vote count data. It's obvious that there was a problem with the data from 2 provinces. However, a portion of the data was lost. Normally, the system's surveillance program would give an early warning and ask everyone to recount the votes. However, the last surveillance system was implanted with an intelligent language program, so the early warning system was also overwritten. As a result, there was an error in the results. This time, we removed the intelligent language program from the surveillance system and discovered that the same error occurred in the vote count this time. However, because the artificial intelligent language program was erased, the system successfully gave an early warning and received the attention of the surveillance personnel. This also caused the surveillance personnel to have reasonable suspicions about the results of the last vote count. Gu Nianji held a laser pointer in her hand as she spoke confidently to the data on the large screen. After a recount, we discovered that the person who won the last election should have been Mr. Bai Jianqing and not Mr. Tan Dongbang, who took advantage of the system. As soon as she finished speaking, everyone roared with laughter. The tense atmosphere in the large conference hall gradually relaxed. However, not many people agreed with her words. Tan Dongbang was the first to cross his arms in disdain. "Ah, that's it? That's your evidence? You still dare to say that it wasn't? If you're out to pin a crime on someone, you can always find a pretext? This was clearly a system malfunction. How did it become my fault? Also, what right do you have to say that the warning system was overwritten by that language program the first time? Isn't it all up to you? Are you bullying us because we don't understand? Then Mr. Tan means that this was only a system malfunction and had nothing to do with you?" Gu Nianji retorted coolly. "But why did Mr. Bai's vote be hidden from the system twice and only your vote be counted? You say there's nothing wrong with such an intelligent system malfunction? Do you think we don't have common sense or intelligence? Then how would I know? That's why it's called a system malfunction." Tan Dongbang looked at Gu Nianji with a grin. His gaze was like a cat catching a mouse. Gu Nianji looked at Tan Dongbang darkly. It wasn't that she didn't admire him. Tan Dongbang's system malfunction had easily erased the evidence they had worked so hard to find. because no one could understand such a thing. If they couldn't understand it, they would be suspicious and would be led by the nose by Tan Dongbang's words. Gunyanji was a bit anxious. Fine beads of sweat seeped out of the tip of her delicate nose. And this kind of cheating was indeed a system malfunction. Even Gunyanji couldn't deny this. It had to be said that the other party had set up a huge trap for them. If they were even slightly careless, they would fall into the other party's trap. This was probably why Tan Dongbang dared to stand up and directly confront Speaker Long for evidence, right? He seemed to be certain that Speaker Long wouldn't be able to produce evidence that would convince everyone, so he put on a pitiful expression of being framed and secretly manipulated. But why was Tan Dongbang so certain? Gunyanji's mind raced. The 4 lines of intelligent programming language were clearly inserted by Hong Kongquan, so how did Tan Dongbang seem to know about it? Could it be that Hong Kongquan was also colluding with Tan Dongbang? When she thought of this, Gunyanji suddenly had a flash of inspiration. There must be collusion. Hong Kongquan was directly connected to Kai Songyin, and Tan Dongbang was Kai Songyin's husband, so they were connected. That's it. Evidence. They had a ready-made witness. She didn't need to talk about high-tech intelligent programming language with these people. They clearly had great evidence in their hands. Not only could they prove that Tan Dongbang had cheated in the last election, but they could also kill him with one slap. A smile suddenly appeared on Gunyanji's face. Her entire body relaxed. She tilted her head to look at Tan Dongbang with a smile. Mr. Tan, this is a system malfunction, but this system malfunction wasn't caused by the system. It was caused by humans. We have concrete evidence that proves that the system malfunction this time was caused by the wanted director of the Secret Service, Hong Kongquan. As soon as Hong Kongquan's name was announced, everyone in the conference hall and the tens of thousands of viewers in front of their televisions went into an uproar. They really couldn't understand the high-tech evidence that Gunyanji had just shown them. They were even slightly biased toward Tan Dongbang because everyone had a compassionate heart and would naturally be biased toward the weak. But Hong Kongquan was different. In order to capture Hong Kongquan and the Japanese spy, Hua Xiaoheng and his men had issued a nationwide arrest warrant. Almost every Huaxia citizen in front of their televisions knew that Hong Kongquan had escaped with the Japanese spy. So, Mr. Tan, why would Hong Kongquan, a traitor to the enemy, tamper with the system for you? Did you collude with the Japanese spy and instruct Hong Kongquan to tamper with the system in order to be elected as the prime minister? Gunyanji was in for a penny, in for a pound. She had directly tied Tan Dongbang to Hong Kongquan and pinned him with the label of traitor. As soon as Tan Dongbang heard the name Hong Kongquan, he was immediately dumbfounded. Could it be that Hong Kongquan hadn't successfully escaped? When he thought about how Hua Xiaoheng had just come in unscathed, a chill ran down his spine. His legs trembled and his entire body swayed. His face was frighteningly pale. He still wanted to quibble, but when he opened his mouth he couldn't make a sound. A sense of fear, as if he was facing a great enemy, made it impossible for him to argue. Seeing this, Hua Xiaoheng immediately instructed a member of the Special Operations Forces to walk in. He flashed his identification and said to Speaker Long, "Speaker Long, due to the close connection between Tan Dongbang and Hong Kongquan's case and the serious threat to national security, we must take him away for investigation. Please approve." This was the first 4,000-word chapter. It was the third night watch today. Everyone's guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Hurry up and vote. The second night watch at 1 p.m. and the third night watch at 7 p.m. Moi. Chapter 11-12. Tan Dongbang's vision darkened as he fell to the ground. The Special Operations Forces personnel immediately caught him and pressed down on his arm. They nodded at the military police maintaining order in the Senate and escorted Tan Dongbang out of the Senate conference hall. Kai Songyin watched this scene with a livid expression and suddenly grabbed Tan Gairen's arm. "Little darling, let's go." "Mommy. What happened to Daddy? Why are they arresting Daddy?" Tan Gairen stood up with Kai Songyin in confusion. Hua Xiaoheng watched them leave coldly as he ordered his men to keep an eye on Kai Songyin. Kai Songyin's mind was in a mess and didn't realize someone was following them at all. She only knew that Hong Kongquan had been arrested, and now even Tan Dongbang was in jail. She might be in danger too. "Little darling, hurry up and pack your things. We're going to the United States together for a while." Kai Songyin was a bit panicked and called her older brother, Kai Sumin, along the way. Kai Sumin didn't pick up her call and immediately bought a ticket back to the United States to leave that day. Kai Xingnan didn't understand why Kai Sumin was in such a hurry to leave. Kai Sumin kept looking at his watch and said uneasily, "Why don't you come back to the United States with me? Your uncle's situation is a bit complicated. There's no future for you if you stay here." Kai Xingnan originally wanted to go back as well, but when she saw Gun Yinji appear next to Speaker Long today and rebuke Tan Dongbang, she would be lying if she said she didn't regret it. She had such a great opportunity to show her face not only in front of Speaker Long but also in front of the entire nation and even the entire world. How could she give it up for a mere appointment letter? She was extremely upset. This was a habit she had developed after working in the United States for many years. Everything had to be signed in black and white first and then they would work for you. Also, when they worked, they would never perform services that exceeded the contract stipulations. But the Wuxia Empire was different. Here they paid particular attention to work first so the person you helped would naturally not mistreat you. If they had talked about conditions before, it would most likely have fallen through. Kai Xingnan finally realized this difference and understood that she had given away such a great opportunity just like that. She was very unhappy. She felt that she was better than Gun Yinji in every aspect. The only thing she was lacking was that she hadn't been in the Wuxia Empire for so many years and was somewhat unfamiliar with the ways of the Wuxia Empire. However, this was nothing. Once bitten, twice shy. She would soon catch up. Therefore she refused to leave. She hoped to climb to the top of the political hierarchy in the Wuxia Empire. This was something she couldn't achieve even if she became a partner in a large law firm in the United States. Kai Sumin knew what she was thinking and didn't try to persuade her any further. He was in the United States anyway. If Kai Xingnan couldn't survive in the country anymore, she would naturally go back. Kai Songyin received Kai Sumin's text message. She couldn't get through to her older brother, Kai Sumin's phone, so she didn't know what to do at the moment. After returning home, he hurriedly took out his passport, packed a few things and went online to buy a plane ticket. He successfully bought the ticket for today, but the flight was in the afternoon, and there were still a few hours left. Kai Songyin and Tang Guirin were in the VIP lounge of the airport, watching TV and playing on their phones. Kai Sumin had also bought this flight. Kai Sumin sighed when he saw Kai Songyin enter with Tang Guirin in the VIP lounge, but he still greeted them. "Songyin, little darling, you guys are going to America too?" Kai Sumin walked over with a briefcase in hand. Kai Songyin almost burst into tears when she saw Kai Sumin. "Big brother, so you're going back to America?" Kai Sumin nodded. "I saw what happened with Dongbang, but I'm not very familiar with this area. When I return to America, I'll introduce you to a few lawyers who are familiar with national security." "Thank you so much, big brother." Kai Songyin smiled bitterly. "But I will sue for divorce so you don't have to worry." Kai Sumin thought about it. "That's good too. Tan Dongbang will never see the light of day in this lifetime. You have to plan for yourself too." "Uncle, Mommy, what are you talking about? Is it about Daddy?" Tan Guirin was restless. She couldn't watch her father go to jail for the rest of his life, and she didn't want to go abroad with her mother. "Mommy, you can't do this. If you leave, what will happen to Daddy?" Tan Guirin stood up with her luggage. "I'm not leaving. Mommy, if you want to leave, then leave alone." She grabbed her luggage and turned to leave resolutely. "Little darling." Kai Songyin panicked and chased after her. In the Senate's large conference room, the little episode ended with Tan Dongbang being taken away by the Special Operations Forces for investigation. Speaker Long thanked Gun Yinji with a smile for her hard work and great initiative. Gun Yinji quickly replied politely before walking off the podium to return to the Senate staff's seat. On the podium, Speaker Long had already begun to announce the results of the second election as if nothing had happened. The results of the second interim election show that a total of 86,376,545 votes were cast. Mr. Bai Jianqing won in all 34 provinces and won a total of 75,267,763 votes, which is 64,158,981 votes more than the second-place finisher, Mr. Tan Dongbang. He was elected the new Prime Minister of the Wuxia Empire with an absolute advantage. Let us welcome Bai Jianqing's speech on stage with a round of applause. Speaker Long took the lead in applauding. Bai Jianqing had actually been the winner of both elections. However, he had been intercepted the first time, and only truly won the second time. Bai Jianqing had worked in the cabinet for more than 30 years. He had started as a low-level staff member and worked his way up to his current position. Naturally, he was filled with emotion. Especially when he learned that he had also won the first time, his eyes nearly turned red. He had worked so hard for so long, and his only goal in life was to become the Prime Minister and realize his political ambitions. In the end, he had failed miserably in his first election and lost inexplicably. He was the only one who knew how he had managed to survive that period of time. Bai Yueran was extremely happy, and her usually calm face broke into a wide smile. She adjusted Bai Jianqing's bow tie and said with a smile, "Dad, it's all up to you now." Bai Jianqing smiled at her with relief and walked to the podium to shake Speaker Long's hand. "Speaker Long, I will definitely live up to the expectations of the people, the country, and you." "Okay, we'll wait and see." Speaker Long shook his hand encouragingly and patted his shoulder. "Our country has already wasted a lot of time. We can't waste any more." Prime Minister Dou and Tan Dongbang had both been hard to deal with. However, Prime Minister Dou and Tan Dongbang were both related to Japanese spies, so they could probably be neighbors in prison. At the same time, He Zhichu wasn't watching the Senate's Prime Minister election program. Instead, he was watching another piece of news on TV. This piece of news was about a glowing blue sea cave that had suddenly appeared between Sea City and Japanese waters. However, he didn't watch this news for long before it was interrupted. "Now we have a piece of breaking news. Mr. Bai Jianqing has been elected as the new Prime Minister. The Prime Minister of Japan has taken the lead in sending a congratulatory message to the new Prime Minister of the Wuxia Empire, Mr. Bai Jianqing. At the same time, he has appealed to the new Prime Minister, Mr. Bai Jianqing, to display his humanitarian spirit and help the more than 200 Japanese frogmen trapped in the sea of blue and purple lightning to return home." This was the second watch. It was the third watch. Everyone's guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Hurry up and vote. It was 7 in the evening, the third watch. Moi. Chapter 11-13. Ijichu sneered as he listened. He picked up the glass of red wine and sniffed it before downing it in one gulp. The Japanese were always like this wherever they went. Humanitarianism? Why didn't they show the spirit of humanitarianism to the people of Wuxia during the invasion? Could it really be that time could wash away all scars? No, some mistakes cannot be forgiven and some scars will never disappear. Ijichu put down his wine glass and switched to the news channel. This time he saw the scene where the parliament announced the results of the election. The newly elected Prime Minister, Bai Jianqing, was giving a rousing speech, encouraging everyone to unite and fight for the revitalization of China. Ijichu's shimmering almond-shaped eyes flashed. He suddenly wanted to know how this veteran politician would react when he heard the Japanese Prime Minister's appeal for humanitarianism. The Assembly's interim general election was a great success. Although there was a small interlude in the middle when Tan Dongbang jumped out to tear Speaker Long apart, it was resolved perfectly. Tan Dongbang had been taken away by the Special Operations Forces for investigation, and Gu Nianji had also made a great contribution to Speaker Long. After the meeting, the new Prime Minister, Bai Jianqing, was surrounded by a large group of people. They were all his colleagues from the cabinet, and they would go out to celebrate his election later. Since the cabinet had been dissolved, the first thing Bai Jianqing had to do was to reorganize the cabinet as soon as possible. Gu Nianji smiled as she watched the crowd surround Bai Jianqing and leave. She scanned the crowd for a while but didn't see Hua Xiaoheng. Of course, she didn't see General Ji either. He must have left. Gu Nianji had come in Hua Xiaoheng's car, so how was she going to get back? Gu Nianji couldn't help feeling a headache coming on. Speaker Long specially called her over and said very kindly, "Nianji, you performed very well tonight. I have already spoken to Special Assistant Zhuang. When you come to work tomorrow, I will officially appoint you as legal counsel." Was there no need to take the exam? Gu Nianji's eyes lit up. Really? Does that mean I don't have to take the exam? Speaker Long couldn't help but laugh. You still have to take the exam, but it won't be difficult for you. The exam is next week. You have to work hard. Gu Nianji shrugged. Okay, I'll try my best. After exchanging a few more pleasantries with Speaker Long finally turned to leave. Gu Nianji was worried about how to go back when Yin Shixiang's voice came through her Bluetooth headset. "Nianji, I'll return to the base later. Hua Xiao asked me to bring you back with me. Nianji, your performance today was amazing." Yin Shixiang spared no effort in praising Gu Nianji. He had only mentioned the beginning to Gu Nianji, but Gu Nianji had performed so well. It was truly unexpected. Gu Nianji laughed. "Brother Xiong, you're being too hypocritical. Do we need to be so polite with each other?" Of course. If I'm not polite, Hua Xiao will mess with me again." Yin Shixiang's exaggerated tone made Gu Nianji giggle. She simply packed her things and went to the entrance of the parliament building to wait for Yin Shixiang. Gu Nianji secretly tried to figure out where Hua Xiaoheng had gone, but when she thought about the nature of their work, she quickly understood. At that moment, Hua Xiaoheng was rushing to Terminal T3 of the Imperial Capital International Airport with his men. The people following Kai Songyin discovered that she had bought a ticket to the United States and was about to take a flight to the United States that very night. She and Tang Guiren both had 10-year B1 visas to the United States so they could go on vacation anytime they wanted. Of course, Hua Xiaoheng and the others wouldn't let her go abroad. In the VIP lounge of Terminal T3 of the Imperial Capital International Airport, Kai Songyin had just stopped Tang Guiren at the door and scolded her. "Child, you don't have to worry about daddy and mommy's matters. You just have to take care of yourself. What's the point of you going back? You still don't know what your daddy did, do you? If mommy knows, she can tell me," Tang Guiren said calmly. "But I can't ignore daddy's life." After a pause, Tang Guiren continued, "If mommy were to be arrested, I would also run errands for you." Kai Songyin was so angry she almost fell to the ground. How dare this child say that? How could anyone curse their own mommy like that? It wasn't a good thing to be arrested, but she still wanted to join in on the fun? For the first time, Kai Songyin felt a headache coming on from Tang Guiren's innocence and kindness. Sometimes, her innocence and kindness really attacked everyone around her indiscriminately. She patted her lightly. "Don't talk nonsense. Mommy didn't do anything bad like your daddy did, so she won't be arrested." However, less than 5 minutes after she said that, she was slapped in the face. A group of men dressed in the black uniforms of the Special Operations Forces surrounded the VIP lounge of Terminal T3 of the Imperial Capital International Airport. The person in front recognized Kai Songyin at first glance. She and her daughter were standing not far from the door, and her daughter was still carrying a suitcase. Was she going abroad? Or to the United States? The Special Operations Forces man sneered and slowly walked over. He looked Kai Songyin up and down. "You are Kai Songyin, the former First Lady?" Kai Songyin nodded and asked cautiously, "Who are you?" The man showed her his ID and said, "Madam Kai Songyin, you are suspected of using your company to launder money, bribe and collude with Hong Kong Quan in an attempt to steal state secrets. According to regulations, people like you can't go abroad. Please come with me." Kai Songyin's heart sank. They had come to her? She really couldn't hide from it. She shook her head in panic and said, "You can't abuse your power to threaten me like this." "I didn't. My company is operating normally and I have never done anything illegal." "Madam Kai, whether or not you launder money, bribe or steal state secrets has nothing to do with us. We were only commissioned by the court to arrest a fugitive." The Special Operations Forces man answered politely and only targeted Kai Songyin. He didn't mean to make things difficult for anyone else. "The court. How did you end up in the court? It's night time now." Kai Songyin frowned. "If you want me to go back and help with the investigation, please put your attitude first. You are very annoying like this." The Special Operations Forces man laughed. "We are not here for you to like. We are a force of violence and we are a law enforcement agency. We have the right to expose any illegal behavior. Madam Kai, please come with us." The man showed a court order. It wasn't an arrest warrant, but a deportation order. Kai Songyin's face lost all color. Her hands trembled as she took the order from the man and looked at it for a long time. "Please come with us." The Special Operations Forces man took out a pair of shiny handcuffs. Kai Songyin's vision darkened, and she finally fainted. Tan Guiren threw herself at her and kept crying, "Mommy?" Anyone who saw it would be sad. The Special Operations Forces man didn't mind. He picked her up with one arm and put her to the side before escorting Kai Songyin away. Tan Guiren covered her face and sat on the sofa in the VIP room, crying like a child. It was the third watch. It was the third watch today. Everyone hurry up and cast your guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Good night, my dears. Chapter 11-14. When Kai Songyin was escorted away, Kai Sumin stood nearby and watched coldly. He even took out his phone to secretly record it. However, even with his many years of experience as a senior American lawyer, he couldn't find any violations during the escort process. If he couldn't find any violations, then the possibility of making an issue out of it was very small. Kai Sumin quietly looked at his phone and replayed it over and over again. When he finally couldn't watch anymore, he sighed and put his phone away. At that moment, Hua Xiaoheng was sitting in his bulletproof car and staring at the surveillance video in the car to watch his subordinates' actions. When his subordinates from the Special Operations Forces went to the VIP lounge of Terminal T3 at the Imperial Capital International Airport to arrest people, they wore cameras throughout the entire process. Not only did they record audio and video, but they also recorded the surrounding environment within 10 meters. Inevitably, Hu Xiaoheng saw Kai Sumin. A burly and tall man with a serious expression stood in the corner and kept looking down at his phone. This man looked somewhat familiar. Hu Xiaoheng activated the facial recognition system in the surveillance video and quickly did a search. That person's information quickly appeared on his screen. Lines of beautiful song script appeared next to Kai Sumin's profile picture. Kai Sumin, male, 55 years old. American citizen. Senior lawyer. Once the top lawyer for the former president of the United States. He helped the former president win the rape case and impeachment case. Kai Songyin's older brother, Kai Xingnan's father. Hu Xiaoheng raised his eyebrows. He was actually here? Was he here to send Kai Songyin overseas? Or was he taking Kai Songyin with him? He checked the system again and found that Kai Sumin was also on a flight that night. He was returning to the United States. He couldn't deal with this person like he dealt with Kai Songyin because he was American and not a Wuxia citizen. Kai Sumin didn't want to return to the United States now. If Tan Dongbang was the only one being arrested, Kai Sumin definitely wouldn't get involved because it wasn't worth it to work for a scumbag like Tan Dongbang. Therefore, he chose to return to the United States immediately to prevent his sister from asking him for help. Should he help Tan Dongbang or not? But now that his own sister was arrested, he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. He watched Tan Guiran cry alone in her seat. She was already in her 20s, but she was still as innocent as a child. Kai Sumin watched Tan Guiran from nearby and sighed again. His sister was good in every way and she was very strong-willed all her life. However, she spoiled her daughter too much. Of course, Tan Guiran had the right to be spoiled. She had been a musical genius since she was young, and she had a family background like the Kai family and the Tan family. She was destined to grow up in an ivory tower and completely retain her innocence. But now both of her parents were arrested, and her ivory tower had collapsed. Who would protect her in the future? Kai Sumin had no choice. She was his younger sister's daughter, so he could only take her in and take care of her. He knew that no matter what happened in the future, Kai Songyin would never be able to let go of her daughter. After hesitating for a long time, Kai Sumin still dragged his suitcase over to Tan Guiran. Just as he stood still in front of her, Kai Sumin suddenly discovered that another pair of shiny military boots had entered his field of vision. Kai Sumin slowly raised his head and looked up to see a tall man in a black uniform standing in front of him with his hands clasped behind his back. This man was mature and steady with an imposing appearance. His brows were as deep as the sea, and the bridge of his nose was as straight as a mountain. His facial features were impeccably handsome, and a golden epaulette flashed on his shoulder with a wheat ear and a gold star. It was the rank of Major General. Kai Sumin looked at him with slight surprise. "May I ask who you are? Is there something you need?" Kai Sumin actually recognized who this person was, but it was better to pretend not to know him at this time. This person was Hu Xiaoheng. He looked at Kai Sumin calmly and said, "You are Mr. Kai Sumin, right?" "Yes." "May I ask who you are?" Kai Sumin hadn't finished speaking when Tan Guiran's head snapped up and she stood up in surprise and joy. "Major General Hua? Is it really you, Major General Hua? I'm begging you, release my parents. They're old and can't bear the torment. You're arresting me. Arrest me, please." Hu Xiaoheng was speechless. The corners of Kai Sumin's mouth couldn't help but twitch. He pulled Tan Guiran over and held her arm as he nodded at Hu Xiaoheng. "So it's Major General Hua. Please don't be offended. My niece suffered a major shock today and is speaking incoherently." "I'm not speaking incoherently." Tan Guiran wanted to struggle out of Kai Sumin's hands. "I truly want to replace my parents. Uncle, you're a great lawyer. Can you convince Major General Hua to release my parents?" Kai Sumin's eyebrows twitched as he said solemnly, "Little darling, don't mess around. Uncle will help you save your parents. Don't cause trouble." Okay, I won't cause trouble. But Uncle, you have to save them. You just had to go back to the United States. How are you going to save my parents?" Tan Guiran cried even louder. If she were the one in jail, she wouldn't be so panicked. When she was kidnapped in New York, she forced herself not to shed a single tear. But now it was her parents who were trapped, so she couldn't control herself. Her tears flowed out like a broken dam. Hu Xiaoheng curled his lips and continued Tan Guiran's words as he said slowly, "Lawyer Kai is going back to the United States. Leaving at this time and abandoning your sister and brother-in-law? That's not very moral, right?" A trace of embarrassment flashed through Kai Sumin's eyes, but he still maintained his composure. "How could I abandon my sister? I was going to leave but I just saw my sister being taken away and imprisoned so I decided not to leave. As he spoke, Kai Sumin patted Tangyuren's shoulder. Little darling, don't cry. Let's go back together and think of a solution. Okay, uncle. Tangyuren sobbed as she tugged on the corner of Kai Sumin's shirt. Kai Sumin wanted to take Tangyuren out of the VIP room, but Hua Xiaoheng still stood there without moving and blocked their way. Major General Hua, shouldn't you move aside? Kai Sumin asked calmly. We have to go back. Great lawyer Kai, shouldn't you delete the video of us carrying out our mission that you secretly recorded on your phone? Hua Xiaoheng said slowly. He curled his right hand and pointed at Kai Sumin's pocket where he kept his phone. Kai Sumin was speechless. No. You can't invade my privacy. Kai Sumin refused flatly. You can't check my phone. Hua Xiaoheng laughed. I can't check it? Of course you're invading a citizen's right to privacy. Kai Sumin spoke with certainty. He didn't dare believe that anyone in this world would dare make such an unreasonable request to see his phone. But you're not a citizen of our country, so the citizen's right to privacy is invalid to you. As a foreigner, you have to abide by all the rules of our country when you come to our country. We have the right to believe that your phone contains content harmful to our country's security, Hua Xiaoheng said coolly as he took 2 steps forward. He extended his hand to Kai Sumin as he walked 2 steps forward. His polished military boots made heavy sounds on the carpet in the VIP room. Each step was like stepping on the bottom of one's heart. Tangyuren only felt her heartbeat rise and fall along with Hua Xiaoheng's footsteps. She lowered her head and covered her chest with her hand. Kai Sumin's pupils abruptly contracted. This Major General Hua really didn't look like a typical soldier with all brawn and no brains. He actually knew the law, and the most subtle thing was that his statement was absolutely equivalent to the practice of U.S. Customs. U.S. Customs was authorized by the U.S. Supreme Court to inspect the luggage and all electronic devices carried by travelers coming to the United States. There had been a few Huaxia citizens who had entered U.S. Customs before because U.S. Customs found inappropriate content on their phones and were deported on the spot. As a senior lawyer, Kai Sumin was very familiar with these rules. He also didn't hide anything shameful on his phone because he knew that everything connected to the internet had unsafe elements. However, the video he just took was indeed a bit inappropriate. Kai Sumin narrowed his eyes and sized up Hua Xiaoheng. After a moment of stalemate, he finally took out his phone, unlocked it and handed it to Hua Xiaoheng. He looked at Hua Xiaoheng with a smile. As long as Hua Xiaoheng dared to take his phone, Hua Xiaoheng would fall into his trap. That was because that rule was authorized to customs personnel. Not everyone had the right to check a foreigner's phone. However, Hua Xiaoheng didn't take it. Instead, he said to the person beside him wearing a customs uniform, Xiao Li, this is within the scope of your responsibility. The customs personnel named Xiao Li wore white gloves and took the phone from Kai Sumin's hand to open it to check. Xiao Li was a well-trained customs personnel, so he quickly found the video and casually sent it to his own email. Then he physically deleted it from Kai Sumin's phone. At the same time, he checked the cloud system on Kai Sumin's phone and found that it wasn't turned on. Only then did he feel reassured and hand the phone back to him. It's fine now. Don't take videos here in the future. Xiao Li pointed to a large sign in the VIP room that read, No audio or video recording without authorization. Kai Sumin didn't succeed and smiled awkwardly. I'm sorry. It was my fault. I didn't see the sign's reminder. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. Lawyer Kai, remember this in the future. This is your first offense, so consider it a warning. If you commit another offense, you'll be punished for both offenses. I didn't expect Major General Hua to be well versed in the law even though he's a soldier. Kai Sumin returned to his senses and began chatting with Hua Xiaoheng with a half-smile. When he took his phone back, he sent a message to his daughter, Kai Xingnan, asking her to pick him up at the airport. At that time, Kai Xingnan hadn't walked very far. She quickly called when she received Kai Sumin's message. Daddy, what happened? Did the flight get cancelled? No, I don't plan on going back for now, Kai Sumin said slowly. Come pick us up first. We'll talk later. After hanging up, Kai Sumin spread his hands at Hua Xiaoheng. Major General Hua, is there anything else? Hua Xiaoheng glanced at Tangyuren and said, Miss Tan, according to the rules, you're Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin's immediate family. Before their case is resolved, you can't leave the country. Tangyuren quickly shook her head. I won't run away. Don't worry, Major General Hua. If you're afraid I'll run away, you can lock me up. I guarantee that my parents won't run away either. Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. Kai Sumin knew that his sister and brother-in-law had once wanted Hua Xiaoheng to be their son-in-law. Now that he saw how obedient his niece was, he had a thought and said, "Sorry to trouble you, Major General Hua. My niece has been too well protected by her family since she was young, so she doesn't have much social experience. Now that both her parents have been arrested by you, the only person she trusts is you. Why don't you take her back and be closer to her parents?" This was the first night watch. It was the third night watch today. Everyone's guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Hurry up and vote. The second night watch at 1 p.m. and the third night watch at 7 p.m. P.S. Thank you to Life Like Water for your 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Mwah. Chapter 11:15. Kai Sumin looked at Hua Xiaoheng with a smile like a kind elder. With his experience in lawsuits in the United States, he knew very well how to disqualify the other party's prosecutor and cast a shadow over the other party's evidence. Even if it was brought to court, he could reasonably raise questions to the jury about whether the prosecutor was abusing his power for personal gain, had a conflict of interest, or had an illegal procedure. These were the three reasons that American lawyers preferred to use in lawsuits. If they could defeat the prosecutor, they didn't need to go against the defendant at all. Because the basis of American law was to question public authority, the defendant's rights were protected by all kinds of laws. The victim also had their own protection, so only attacking the prosecutor had the lightest consequences and the greatest benefits. Once Hua Xiaoheng fell for it, Kai Sumin could immediately bail Kai Songyin out. It was fine if Hua Xiaoheng didn't agree since he wouldn't lose anything. But what if he did agree? Wouldn't he be making a profit? He would be an idiot not to try something that had no risk and was highly profitable. Kai Sumin patted Tangairen's shoulder and said kindly, "Little darling, don't cry. Major General Hua won't sit by and do nothing. Didn't he specially go to the United States to pick you up? I think you should go back with Major General Hua. At least you can see your daddy and mommy every day. If they need anything, you can also help look after them." Tangairen already had a glimmer of hope, and now that she heard Kai Sumin say he could help look after her parents' needs, she became even more eager. She clasped her hands in front of her chest and looked at Hua Xiaoheng with her large, watery eyes. She begged repeatedly, "Major General Hua, I beg you. I beg you. Can you take me with you? I just want to see daddy and mommy every day." Hua Xiaoheng's expression was indifferent as he clenched his fist and coughed lightly against his lips. "Lawyer Kai, is there a precedent for you to do this in the United States?" Kai Sumin had been a lawyer for so many years that he wouldn't care even if he was slapped in the face. He said with a smile, "What does it matter if there is a precedent in the United States? As long as you're willing to help, it's nothing. Little darling has great respect for you. If she says you'll listen, then you'll definitely listen. Right, little darling?" Tangairen quickly nodded. "I definitely won't run. You can lock me up with daddy and mommy." Hua Xiaoheng saw that Tangairen and Kai Songyin didn't give up. Putting down his white-gloved hand, Hua Xiaoheng calmly asked Tangairen, "Do you know what charges Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin were arrested for?" Tangairen thought about it. "Daddy cheated in the election? And my mommy? I don't know what my mommy did. I don't think what you said is true. My mommy didn't launder money, bribe, or steal state secrets. She's a good person and would never do such a thing." Hua Xiaoheng raised his hand to stop Tangairen from continuing. "Miss Tan, whether or not your parents did these things depends on the court's verdict. However, right," she said, "Tan, they are Tan. If you want to be locked up with them, fine, but you have to sign that you and your parents are accomplices. You know all of their actions and you are accomplices in the same crime. That way I can lock you up on the same floor." Tangairen's eyes lit up but quickly dimmed. She was about to speak when Kai Sumin interrupted her angrily. He pointed at Hua Xiaoheng and said, "Major General Hua, I really overestimated you. How could you lure an innocent and weak woman into a confession? I want to file a complaint." Hua Xiaoheng smiled. "Didn't you personally suggest it just now, Lawyer Kai? Were you also trying to lure her into a confession? TSK, coaxing your own niece into prison. That's not very honorable, is it?" "I didn't coax little darling into prison." Kai Sumin felt his blood pressure rise and his eardrums rang. "Don't slander me." Hua Xiaoheng pointed at the person beside him. "Everything we did here today was recorded by a camera, including every word you said and every movement you made. If you're still unhappy and need to file a complaint, I'll give you a complaint number." Kai Sumin's face instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He had been a lawyer in the United States for more than 30 years, and he had always been known for his good temper. He often made his opponents stomp their feet, but he could still smile. Because of this, he had earned the nickname, Smiling Tiger. However, Hua Xiaoheng had actually made him stomp his feet with just a few words. Kai Sumin's vigilance towards Hua Xiaoheng increased a few notches, and he didn't dare to underestimate him anymore. Tan Guiran finally stammered, "But I never conspired with Daddy and Mommy and I don't know what they did. How could I sign it? Wouldn't that be a lie?" Hua Xiaoheng's brows furrowed slightly. He was a bit impatient, but he still said calmly, "This was your uncle's suggestion. Ask your uncle. Goodbye." As he spoke, he turned to leave. He had only taken a few steps when Kai Xingnan rushed in from the VIP lounge's door. She suddenly looked up and saw Hua Xiaoheng. She froze and instinctively said, "Major General Hua? Why are you here?" Hua Xiaoheng stopped in his tracks and said slowly, "Because your father wants to coax your cousin to go to prison, so I persuaded him. If you have the time, you should also persuade your father. Miss Tan doesn't have common sense, but it's impossible that your father doesn't. Digging a hole for his niece like this is really—" He then shook his head with a very regretful expression. Even Tan Guiran's heart couldn't help but waver when she heard this. Uncle, did he really mean that? She sneaked a glance at Kai Sumin's expression and was shocked by his furious expression. She quickly looked away. After a while, she couldn't help but look over again. Kai Sumin was infuriated by Tan Guiran's evasive and slightly fearful gaze, but the patience he had honed as a lawyer for many years still won out. He suddenly laughed loudly and said, "Major General Hua is really interesting. Your sense of humor is very good and I admire it. There are very few people in the Huaxia Empire today who have a sense of humor like yours." "Dad, what exactly happened?" Kai Xingnan was even more confused, but when she looked at Hua Xiaoheng and then at the bashful Tan Guiran, Kai Xingnan was alarmed. Kai Sumin laughed and said, "I was joking just now and told Major General Hua to take little darling home. That way she could be closer to your auntie and uncle." "Haha, but Major General Hua misinterpreted my intentions and said that I was trying to coax your cousin into going to prison." "Haha, that's so funny." Although he was laughing happily, there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. Kai Xingnan almost fainted when she heard this. Asking Tan Guiran to go back with Hua Xiaoheng? Wasn't this creating an opportunity for Tan Guiran to be with Hua Xiaoheng? Was he really her biological father? He was actually pushing his daughter's sweetheart to another woman? Kai Xingnan's anger rose in her heart, but she smiled nonchalantly. "How is that possible? Dad, you've been practicing abroad for many years so you don't know the rules here. Aunt and uncle have to be locked up separately for what they did. How can cousin go? Also, aunt and uncle are being locked up by the Special Operations Forces. That's not a place just anyone can go. Cousin doesn't have a pass, right?" Tan Guiran nodded and said pitifully, "I don't have a pass yet. I originally wanted to beg Major General Hua to let me go, but Major General Hua made me sign before I could go." "Sign what?" "Even if he let you go, I wouldn't agree." Kai Xingnan panicked and quickly hugged Tan Guiran. "Come, stay with your cousin. Don't bother with these stinky men." It was the second watch. It was the third watch. Everyone's guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Hurry up and vote. It was 7 p.m. the third watch. Moi. Chapter 11:16. Hua Xiaoheng didn't stop walking and quickly left Terminal 3 of the Imperial International Airport. Sitting in his car, Hua Xiaoheng rubbed his forehead and ordered, "Return to the base." They had made this trip for Kai Songyin. Hua Xiaoheng could already sense that Hong Kongquan, Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin had a faint connection between the three of them that connected them. However, he still couldn't figure out what this thread was. His instincts told him that he had to control the three of them first before he could dig further. After Hong Kongquan's escape, Hua Xiaoheng became very cautious. Tan Dongbang had been taken away and imprisoned by his trusted subordinates right under his nose. Kai Songyin had been captured and imprisoned by him personally. Any one of these three people missing would result in an immeasurable loss. Fortunately, all three of them were imprisoned in the Special Operations Forces so he could close the net. It was already 2 in the morning when he returned to the base. Another day had passed and Hua Xiaoheng walked up the stairs. The second floor of the official residence was the floor he and Gunyanji lived on. Their suites faced each other on opposite ends of the hallway. When Hua Xiaoheng opened his room, he turned to look at Gunyanji's side and noticed that faint light could still be seen through the crack in the door. Was she still awake? Hua Xiaoheng thought about it and opened Gunyanji's door with his palm print. He walked in. The light came from the chandelier in the living room. It looked like a clump of reeds that covered the sofa in the corner. Gu Nianji was lying on the sofa with her panda pillow as her head. She was sleeping soundly. Hua Xiaoheng quietly admired her sleeping face. After a while, he bent down and raised his hand to smooth her messy hair. Then he carried her horizontally and carried her to the bedroom. Gu Nianji was still wearing the black military cotton t-shirt that reached her thighs as her pajamas. Her fair skin had a different kind of beauty against the black t-shirt. She was like a blooming epiphyllum in a quiet night. He placed her on the bed and covered her with a thin blanket. He kissed her forehead and was about to leave when Gu Nianji woke up in a daze. She had been waiting for Hua Xiaoheng in the living room, but she didn't expect to fall asleep while waiting. When she sensed someone coming in her sleep, she was about to wake up, but when she sensed the comforting atmosphere in the air, she knew it was Hua Xiaoheng. Other than him, no one else had such a comforting feeling even in her sleep. She only opened her eyes when he planted a kiss on her forehead. She mumbled, "It's late. Go to sleep. Staying up late every day isn't good for your health." As she spoke, she naturally hugged Hua Xiaoheng and found a comfortable spot in the crook of his arm. She bent her legs and fell asleep again. Hua Xiaoheng quietly shifted his body away, but he didn't pull his arm away. He let her sleep on his pillow for half the night. Hua Xiaoheng woke up at 6 the next morning. This was determined by his biological clock. He quietly got out of bed and went out to exercise. He came back at 7 o'clock to take a shower and eat breakfast. Breakfast was at 7:30 a.m., but Gu Nianji had also woken up and was waiting for Hua Xiaoheng in the dining room. Yin Shixiang also came with Hua Xiaoheng. He had his own room in Hua Xiaoheng's official residence and usually stayed there when he wasn't on assignment. "Good morning, Nianji." Yin Shixiang greeted her with a smile. Gu Nianji nodded. "Good morning, Brother Xiong." "Good morning, Hua Xiao." Hua Xiaoheng grunted and sat across from her. "Did you rest well last night?" "Yes, I slept better than ever." Gu Nianji winked at Hua Xiaoheng with a smile. It was rare that Hua Xiaoheng didn't torture her when they slept together. She had to praise him. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at her and cut his steak for himself non-committally. "When do you plan to start working at the Senate?" Gu Nianji counted with her fingers. "I still have some things to do. Also, I had to rest for a few more days after my last injury. I don't want to be out of touch with the masses." Yin Shixiang almost spat out his coffee. "You are out of touch with the masses." Yin Shixiang was about to die from laughter. Gu Nianji pointed at herself proudly. "Of course. When the masses get injured, they usually need to rest for 10 days to half a month. Of course, I can't go overboard. Even if I don't get 10 days to half a month, I'll at least get 7 or 8 days." She didn't want others to think of her as a monster, so she tried her best to be like a normal person. Hua Xiaoheng forked a piece of steak and ate it. After swallowing, he said, "Of course it's good to rest for a few more days. But Nianji, do you really want to work at the Senate?" He heard that Gu Nianji would have to sign a contract if she went to the Senate again. Gu Nianji propped her head up with her hand and said awkwardly, "Other than this, I don't know what else I can do. I can go to a law firm, but I haven't submitted my resume yet. I don't want to give people a chance to humiliate me." "You're thinking too much." Hua Xiaoheng shook his head. "You can work at the Senate for a while. It's just a contract anyway. It's best not to exceed 2 years. The contract can be renegotiated after 2 years." Gu Nianji nodded. "I understand. I'll tell Speaker Long that." Yin Shixiang gave her a thumbs up and turned on the TV with his other hand. The morning news was actually broadcasting news related to Japan. The Japanese Prime Minister and the Emperor of Japan were both speaking to the new Prime Minister of the Wuxia Empire, Bai Jianqing. "Prime Minister Bai, do you really have the heart to see our frogmen soldiers die at the bottom of the sea like this?" "Prime Minister Bai, you are an indomitable hero with a compassionate heart. Saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Not to mention the lives of more than 200 people. As a responsible country, Prime Minister Bai definitely doesn't want to leave the international impression that the Wuxia Empire is cruel and merciless." When Gu Nianji heard this, she only wanted to say one thing, King retard. If Prime Minister Bai really responds to Japan's call, I will feel despair for the world. Gu Nianji angrily fed herself a mouthful of porridge. Hua Xiaoheng's stern gaze turned to her. "Don't open your mouth when you're eating." Gu Nianji quickly shut her mouth. After finishing a mouthful of porridge, she lazily said, "But then again, those frogmen soldiers are quite resistant. The oxygen in their scuba tanks is about to run out, right?" Hua Xiaoheng looked at his watch and said calmly, "Their scuba tanks can still last for another 18 hours, so don't worry. The bluish-purple electric arcs around the buoy circle formed an electric fence. Since it was a fence, only the edges were important. It was more powerful after the electric current, but only where the buoy was. The voltage at the bottom of the sea in the center of the buoy circle was still slightly lower. Gunyanji had experienced the electric shock in the sea, so it was naturally painful. It was like thousands of tiny needles constantly pricking you, but they were only tiny needles, after all, so it wasn't completely unbearable. Of course, it was also amazing that the Japanese frogman soldiers could hide at the bottom of the buoy circle for more than 36 hours without dying. Huo, what do you want to do? Gunyanji asked curiously. She had originally thought that Huo Xiaoheng was going to kill those Japanese frogmen. Huo Xiaoheng finished his steak and said with a half-smile, "What can I do? Nature's uncanny workmanship is so amazing that even I fell. If they don't fall, wouldn't they be letting down their commander?" Yin Shixiang said sarcastically, "That's right, are their lives more noble than ours? If we were the ones in trouble, they would at most bow 90 degrees to express their regret." Yin Shixiang's words were like a prophecy. It didn't take long for Bai Jianqing to appear on TV. This was his first televised speech as the elected prime minister. "Ladies and gentlemen, and the audience in front of the television, hello. As you all know, the Japanese have repeatedly spoken to me in order to save their frogman soldiers, which has caused me serious trouble. My attitude towards Japan has been obvious from beginning to end. First, admit war crimes, apologize for the tens of millions of innocent people killed in the war, repent, and formally apologize to our country in writing. The apology must be signed by the current Prime Minister and the Emperor. Second, dismantle the X-Nation Shrine. War criminals are not worthy of being sacrificed. Bad people are still bad people when they die, and they will not become gods. Death will not make a despicable person noble. Third, return all stolen Wuxia territory and cultural relics, and compensate for war losses." After Bai Jianqing finished these 3 points, he said, "As for what happened to the Japanese frogman troops, it is the responsibility of the Japanese government. The place where they were trapped is Japan's maritime exclusive economic zone. The whole thing has nothing to do with the Wuxia Empire at all. Your demands are very bizarre and inexplicable. Our country has been blocked by the international community for many years, and is a backward China. We do not have the advanced technical conditions to help your frogman soldiers escape from nature's uncanny workmanship. The only thing I can offer is my sincere condolences. I hope you will restrain your grief." With that, Bai Jianqing really bowed. No one could find fault with it. It was the third watch. Everyone's guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Hurry up and vote. Mwah. Chapter 11:17. When this news was broadcast, it was the first televised speech by the new Prime Minister of the Wuxia Empire, and it was clearly directed at one country. It immediately caused a sensation around the world. The Emperor of Japan and the Prime Minister knew that their words had a result, and they watched the live news from the same room. After watching it, both of them looked very embarrassed. The Emperor of Japan was a short, thin man who looked very amiable, just like the honest old farmers in Hokkaido. He frowned and asked his Prime Minister sadly, "Baisenkuen, didn't you say that the Wuxia Empire could rescue people from that blue and purple electric light? Are you sure they can? I think their Prime Minister was very sincere when he spoke just now, and the Wuxia Empire really doesn't seem to have this ability." The Prime Minister of Japan was also very confused. His eyelids drooped as he bowed and said, "It was the Admiral of the Marine Corps who said the Wuxia Empire could. He was there at the time and saw with his own eyes that the Wuxia Empire soldiers had just left our buoy circle, and the buoy circle appeared with super strong blue and purple electric light, trapping our people inside." The Emperor of Japan sighed, "It's a pity that our chief scientist passed away. Otherwise we could ask him why this phenomenon occurred." The Prime Minister of Japan nodded in agreement, "Your Majesty is right, it's a pity. The chief scientist was able to set up the buoy circle with the help of an expert, but we don't know what went wrong. But I still tend to think that the Wuxia Empire bears an unshirkable responsibility for this incident. I remember you said that our frogmen had underwater cameras on them to capture the Wuxia Empire soldiers who broke into our maritime exclusive economic zone. If you can get the content you captured and we send it directly to the new Prime Minister of the Wuxia Empire, will he change his mind?" The Emperor of Japan was able to speak up, in addition to feeling sorry for his elite frogman troops, because he heard from the Prime Minister and the Admiral that they had underwater cameras on them, which could prove that the Wuxia Empire soldiers had something to do with the blue and purple electric light. But they haven't come out of the sea yet, so how can they get the content? The Prime Minister of Japan said very awkwardly, "So we should still rescue them first. Can't their underwater cameras be connected to the internet? Even if they can't come out, can't they directly upload the content they captured or upload it to the cloud?" The Emperor of Japan's question was very sharp. The Prime Minister of Japan was even more embarrassed, and he stammered for a long time before saying, "That place started with a strong magnetic field and now it's a strong electric field. The network signal can't connect underwater at all." Therefore, even though they had brought an underwater camera in and wanted to take the opportunity to obtain irrefutable evidence of Wuxia imperial soldiers trespassing into Japan's maritime exclusive economic zone, they hadn't expected to make such a mistake. They had forgotten that strong magnetic fields and strong electric fields could block network signals. Now the elite frogman troops were all trapped in the circle of bluish-purple electric light and couldn't get out. They couldn't even take out the secret cameras that they had planned. Minister, Emperor of the Minister, the Emperor, and said, "Japan and Minister, and he Minister of Hua and Empire, Emperor Minister. The Hua Minister. As Minister, the Hua Minister, Minister, the Hua is Emperor. The Hua to Minister. They Minister. Minister. Emperor Minister. Emperor. Minister. God. Prime. Emperor. Japan. Minister. Minister. Emperor." Leaving the Emperor's palace, Prime Minister Baisan immediately went to discuss with a Marine Admiral to send someone to break into the blue-purple electric circle. As long as they wore insulated diving suits, they should be able to get in, right? The two of them discussed until late at night. Finally, they selected the strongest and best swimmers in the Marine Corps. They were equipped with the best insulated diving suits in the world, and carried huge scuba gear. They dove to the bottom of the sea, intending to force their way into the blue and purple electric circle. It was a beautiful day and the weather was perfect. The blue surface of the sea shone brightly. The blue and purple electric light was like lightning. It was like the work of nature. If they hadn't seen the Wuxia Empire soldiers escape with their own eyes, they might have really believed the Wuxia Empire's lies. However, they were the only ones who didn't believe it. All the other countries on Blue Planet believed it was a natural phenomenon. They didn't understand why the Japanese government was asking the Wuxia Empire for help. However, as long as they could get their hands on the underwater footage, the entire Blue Planet wouldn't believe that the blue and purple electric light here was the work of nature. Go. The Emperor has high hopes for you. He hopes you can overcome the temporary difficulties and enter the blue and purple electric circle to retrieve the things. If it goes well, we can also rescue ourselves. The Japanese admiral shook hands with the soldiers who were about to go into the sea one by one. He stood on the warship and waved at the soldiers who had already dived into the water. Everyone looked very nervous. Song Jining watched the Japanese enter the water coldly from the scientific research ship. She wasn't worried at all. In fact, the blue and purple electric light here wouldn't exist forever because there was no subsequent energy support. After the energy transformed by the strong magnetic field was exhausted, the strong electric field would naturally decline. However, this decline period was relatively long. Preliminary estimates were 500 years. Therefore, these frogmen could only borrow another 500 years from the heavens. They might be able to come out alive. Song Jining didn't feel guilty at all. If they had to blame someone, they could only blame the Japanese for harming themselves. If they hadn't created a strong magnetic field here to trap Hua Xiaoheng and the others, Song Jining and Gun Yanji wouldn't have been able to come up with the idea of transforming the magnetic field into an electric field. If their magnetic field hadn't been so powerful, the electric field wouldn't have taken 500 years to decline. Song Jining stood in the cabin with sunglasses on, looking at the sea of blue and purple electric light in a daze. What she wanted to know the most was how the Japanese created such a strong magnetic field. Energy couldn't appear out of thin air. It could only be transformed. However, the strong magnetic field here really seemed to appear out of thin air. Song Jining was extremely curious, but after observing here for a few days, these Japanese didn't seem to have a real grasp of the source of energy. It was more like someone had helped them set up a strong magnetic field, but they hadn't learned the essence of it. Therefore, after the magnetic energy was transformed into an electric field, they had no idea how to deal with it. That was why they shamelessly asked the Wuxia Empire for help again and again. Although Song Jining knew the principle, she didn't know how to eliminate such a strong electric field. It was easy to transform a magnetic field into an electric field, but not from an electric field to a magnetic field. Electric shocks could kill people, but magnetic fields wouldn't. This was the most important thing. Gun Yanji's move was really ruthless. Song Jinning's lips curled into a knowing smile. She didn't think that Gun Yenji's move was too much. On the contrary, she didn't think that Gun Yenji had gone too far. On the contrary, Song Jinning felt that the Japanese who had tried to kill her son deserved to die. Seeing the Japanese who were also wearing insulating diving suits enter the water, Song Jinning took out her binoculars to observe. She also wanted to know if insulating diving suits could block the blue and purple electric light. The calm sea rippled a few times, and a few gray figures freely stretched their arms in the water. They rushed into the blue and purple electric circle like swimming fish. The Japanese Navy admiral looked nervously at the sea. Suddenly, a series of electric sparks crackled in the blue and purple electric circle. Then a charred body floated up and was blown away by the waves outside the blue and purple electric circle. Immediately after, another series of electric sparks exploded in the blue and purple electric circle, and another charred body floated up. The Japanese Navy admiral's face darkened, and he immediately ordered people to salvage the bodies. After an autopsy, it was discovered that these two were two of the people who had just entered the water. Their insulating diving suits seemed to have been instantly melted by the high voltage. It was too tragic. Soon, the 10 Japanese Marines wearing insulating diving suits that they had sent into the water today were all dead. Not a single one was spared. The Japanese on the warship howled and beat their chests, crying their hearts out. Song Jinning put down her binoculars with satisfaction and recorded the observed data in her observation notes. The power of the electric fence is exactly as predicted. The existing insulating diving suits can't pass through the electric fence at all. The safety and reliability of this electric fence is AAA+. Inform the captain that we can return. Song Jinning put away her experimental equipment and hummed in a good mood. There was no need to observe anymore. She was sure that the Japanese couldn't get in. In another 10 hours, the trapped frogman's scuba oxygen would run out. If she waited here, she would be scolded for watching the show. 10 hours later, all the TV stations on Blue Planet were broadcasting the major news broadcast by the Japanese TV station. Their elite frogman troops had finally come out of the blue and purple electric circle. They were nothing more than charred corpses that floated up and out. More than 200 people all dead. Such a stimulating scene was, of course, censored. Everyone could only see the dense mosaics on the TV, and they were very sad about it. The new Prime Minister of the Wuxia Empire, Bai Jianqing, immediately sent a message to express his sincere condolences. Although he had already mourned once, Gun Yenji, Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang were sitting in the dining room having dinner. The wall-mounted TV on the opposite wall was also on, and Gun Yenji frowned. "Can't we eat?" Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang didn't speak. They put down the knives in their hands and watched the TV in a daze. Not long after, the TV screen switched to the Japanese Emperor's palace. The Japanese Emperor had a distressed expression and was giving a speech to the TV to appease the people, especially the families of the dead frogmen. This emperor looks quite peaceful. Gun Yenji finally dared to watch the TV and couldn't help commenting. Hua Xiaoheng looked down and cut his steak with his knife and fork. He said calmly, "This emperor is quite interesting. He once said that he only has 4 dates that he must never forget: June 23rd, August 6th, August 9th and August 15th. Huh? What special significance do these 4 dates have?" Gun Yenji asked, puzzled. Hua Xiaoheng didn't speak, but Yin Shixiang did. He said solemnly, "June 23rd was the end of the Battle of Okinawa as the end of the Pacific War. August 6th was the day the atomic bomb exploded in Hiroshima. August 9th was the day the atomic bomb exploded in Nagasaki. August 15th was the day Japan was defeated and surrendered, but the Japanese didn't think of it as defeat and surrender, but as the end of the war. It's completely different from our understanding of defeat and surrender. You see, there isn't a single date that commemorates the great pain Japan caused to the people of other countries. It's all commemorations of their own pain. And these painful memories are entirely their own fault." Yin Shixiang pounded the table. "They have no remorse. Which of the damage they caused to other countries wasn't worse than this? They really don't treat the people of other countries as human beings. Only their own lives are important." Gun Yenji shook her head. "I take back what I said. There is indeed something wrong with this Japanese emperor. No wonder his people have to be fed to the fish. So we don't have to care about what they say." Hua Xiaoheng finished the last piece of steak and said calmly, "We do what we should do, and we won't do what we shouldn't do even if you beat us to death." Gun Yenji and Yin Shixiang nodded together. "Understood, Hua Xiao. After dinner, Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang went to watch Hong Kongquan's interrogation video. Gu Nianji returned to her room and was just about to go through the Senate exam questions that Hua Xiaoheng had given her when she heard her phone ring. She picked it up and saw that it was He Zhichu calling. This was the first watch. It was the third watch. Everyone's guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Hurry up and vote. The second watch at 1 p.m. The third watch at 7 p.m. Moi. Chapter 11:18. Professor He, have you had dinner yet? Don't tell me you're drinking red wine again. Gu Nianji held the phone and lay comfortably on the sofa. She had just finished dinner and felt a little full. Her blood had gone to her stomach to digest the food, and her mind was dizzy and sleepy. He Zhichu looked at the red wine glass in his hand and put it down quietly. I've eaten. Have you eaten? I just finished. I'm feeling sleepy. Gu Nianji yawned. What's the matter? He Zhichu paused and looked out the window at the night sky. He instinctively asked, where are you? Although Gu Nianji knew that whether she was with Hua Xiaoheng or not had nothing to do with He Zhichu, she still felt a little guilty when he asked her this question. Gu Nianji shifted uncomfortably on the sofa and whispered, I'm at Hua Xiao's official residence. He Zhichu closed his eyes and suppressed the emotions in his heart. Yes, do you know how the bluish-purple electric light between Japan and the Huaxia Empire came about? Gu Nianji, she had never expected He Zhichu to ask about this. She hesitated and shook her head. I don't know. Does Professor He know? Don't you think that this bluish-purple electric light is quite similar to the blue hole in the Caribbean Sea? He Zhichu turned on his computer and found the bluish-purple electric light map of the Caribbean blue hole, as well as the bluish-purple electric light map of the Japanese and Huaxia Empire waters that he had taken from the internet. The two pictures were placed on the computer screen. If one didn't look at the surrounding environment, they would think that they were from different angles of the same place. Gu Nianji sat up on the sofa and tried hard to recall the bluish-purple electric light in the Caribbean Sea's blue hole. She muttered, it might look similar from the outside, but isn't lightning all the same? That's lightning in the sky. Do you know how much energy is needed to create so much bluish-purple electric light on the surface of the sea? He Zhichu sneered and turned off the computer. Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat. Professor He had actually guessed that the bluish-purple electric light required a huge amount of energy. She had only thought of using the magnetic field to transform it into an electric field from Song Jining. If it hadn't been for the strong magnetic field energy, Gu Nianji would never have been able to conjure a strong electric field that could emit bluish-purple electricity. So at the end of the day, where did the Japanese get their super-strong magnetic field? Gu Nianji hesitated and asked tentatively, Professor He, do you know what kind of energy could generate such a large electric field? Where did such a huge amount of energy come from? This question was right on point. He Zhichu rubbed his temples and said quietly, you'll have to ask the Japanese about that. After a pause, He Zhichu finally expressed his concern. Nianji, you have to be careful during this time. If you need to leave Hua Xiaoheng, you can call me. I'll be with you. He and Hua Xiaoheng would definitely be able to protect Gu Nianji, right? Gu Nianji became nervous. Professor He, do you know what's going on? At this time there was no need to hide it, right? If you don't tell me the truth, I'll be kept in the dark. This kind of situation is the easiest for something to happen. Gu Nianji wouldn't force He Zhichu to say something he didn't want to say, but this time He Zhichu had clearly said that Gu Nianji would be in danger, so Gu Nianji felt that she had the right to know everything. If He Zhichu kept hesitating, he would be irresponsible for her life. He could choose not to say it, but what was the point of saying half the truth and hiding half the truth? Gu Nianji was starting to get upset. She stood up from the sofa and walked to the computer with her phone in hand. Professor He, since you've already said this, you must have some clues, right? He Zhichu frowned slightly. He was speechless at Gu Nianji's sharp senses. He was silent for a moment, then said, you haven't been paying attention to the progress of the lawsuit you commissioned in Japan recently, have you? Gu Nianji froze. What lawsuit? She then remembered. Oh, it's the lawsuit I commissioned an American law firm to go to Japan to file for the illegal gift of property. Yes, you still remember? I thought you were so generous that you couldn't even be at ease with a $15 billion fortune. He Zhichu said mockingly, Smith and his team of lawyers have been in Japan for almost 2 months. Have you forgotten all about it? How is that possible? Gu Nianji giggled. I remember, but I haven't heard from them recently, so I'll pretend everything is normal. No news is good news. He Zhichu sighed. They told me that the verdict on the case is about to be announced, and they think the chances of winning are very high. They're thinking of asking you to treat them after the lawsuit is over. That's no problem. Gunyenji answered readily. Of course I have to reward them after winning the lawsuit. Yeah. Hijichu's rippling peach blossom eyes were clear. That's what I want you to be careful about. Professor He, are you messing with me? Gunyenji was angry. You're telling me to be careful about this? Are you afraid that I'll die from having too much money? Hijichu was speechless. Hearing the anger in Gunyenji's voice, Hijichu could only say tactfully, people die for money and birds die for food. Don't you understand? Think about it, if you die, wouldn't it be easier for them to reverse the case and not have to pay back the money? These people are willing to do anything for $15 billion US. So that was what he was talking about. Gunyenji breathed a sigh of relief. I'm not afraid. If the Angel in the World Foundation dares to make a move on me, I'll make sure they never return. Hijichu's lips curled. I believe in your abilities, but it's easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to guard against a stab in the dark. Who knows what kind of crazy things they'll do? It's better to be careful. Got it, Professor He. Thank you for the reminder. Gunyenji smiled as she searched on the computer and hung up. Hijichu looked at his phone, which had been hung up on, and sighed. He didn't know how much longer he could hold on, but as long as he was here, he wouldn't let Gunyenji face the same fate as before. After watching Hong Kongquan's interrogation video, Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang shook their heads in unison. Hong Kongquan was still being stubborn even at a time like this. No wonder he was from the military and was the director of the Secret Service. He was even more familiar with all kinds of anti-interrogation and anti-reconnaissance tactics than their interrogators. He either pretended to be deaf and dumb to all the questions, or he shook his head and said he didn't know anything. He insisted that he had been framed and that he had never done anything wrong to the country or the people. Even when they took out the surveillance video of him with the Japanese spy, as well as the video of the Special Operations Forces personnel taking him back from the Japanese, he insisted that he had been held hostage by the Japanese. What about this person? Was he also killed by the Japanese? In the video, the young Special Operations Forces personnel took a photo of the airport police officer being killed and showed it to Hong Kongquan. Don't forget there are surveillance cameras here too. Hong Kongquan slowly looked at the interrogator and said in a low voice. He was indeed killed by the Japanese. I was held hostage by the Japanese and had been trying to escape from them. But after I was rescued by Major General Hua, I think there was some misunderstanding between the two of us that can't be resolved in a short period of time. Unfortunately, the evidence is irrefutable. You won't be able to get away with it. The personnel ended the first round of interrogation and ordered Hong Kongquan to be taken away. The interrogation video ended. Hua Xiaoheng thought about it for a while and decided to find another way to pry Hong Kongquan's mouth open. He pulled up the information on the Weibo blogger's murder from the computer and printed a few photos. Then he personally took the photos and sat down in the interrogation room. Bring Hong Kongquan in. Hong Kongquan had just fallen asleep and was dragged to be interrogated again. He needed to adjust his body and mind. Being arrested and interrogated in the middle of the night would depend on a person's willpower. Most people would be the most confused at this time and would say, yes, yes, yes. Okay. Let me sleep for a while more. However, Hong Kongquan woke up in almost a second and followed the people who were escorting him to the interrogation room. Seeing that it was Hua Xiaoheng sitting in the interrogation position, Hong Kongquan finally smiled. Xiaoheng, you're finally here. I've said it many times. I didn't betray the country. I was held hostage. Why don't you believe me? Really? Hua Xiaoheng pushed the photo of the Weibo blogger, Churchill's Garden, Lu Dayong's death across the table to him. Then do you know this person? It was the second watch. I was delayed by something today, so it was even later. There were only 2 watches left. It was already 1:30 in the morning. I've been staying up late for a few days, so I can't stay up any longer. I need to sleep early. There's no more at night. I'll see if there's a possibility of 4 watches tomorrow, moi. Chapter 11:19. Hua Xiaoheng's face was expressionless as he sat in front of Hong Kongquan and stared at him silently. Hong Kongquan thought that he had predicted everything. Even if he had been caught by Hua Xiaoheng, he would not have surrendered willingly. He had deliberately wanted to backstab Hua Xiaoheng and drag him down with him, because he had left a backup plan for himself. But when he saw the photo of the Weibo blogger, Churchill's Garden, Lu Dayong's death, He almost lost control of his heartbeat. In order to maintain his composure, he bit the tip of his tongue. The piercing pain allowed him to remain calm, but he was actually shocked as if he had seen a ghost. He really did not expect Hua Xiaoheng to have a photo of this person, and to bring it to him for questioning. Hong Kongquan quickly recalled and was very sure that he had done it flawlessly. There was no way Hua Xiaoheng would know that he had something to do with this incident. His heartbeat quickly calmed down. Hong Kongquan looked away from the photo and frowned. Who is this person? Why did you bring it to me? Is he dead? Of course he was dead. This was probably the last photo of the Weibo blogger, Churchill's Garden, in the world. His hands and feet were bent at a strange angle on the red brick path. There was a pool of blood on the top of his head, and his eyes were wide open. He looked very frightening. You don't know him? Hua Xiaoheng's slender fingers tapped on the table. Think again. I wouldn't know him even if I thought 100 times. Hong Kongquan spread his hands. You wouldn't torture me to get a confession, would you? Hua Xiaoheng curled his lips. If you don't know him, then why did you look for him? As he spoke, Hua Xiaoheng took the report that recorded Hong Kongquan's whereabouts that day and placed it in front of Hong Kongquan. Is this familiar? Hong Kongquan lowered his head to hide the flash of panic in his eyes. He looked at the time on the report and shook his head expressionlessly. Not familiar. What is this? Why are you showing it to me? Hong Kongquan shook his head as soon as he asked. Hua Xiaoheng leaned back in his chair, clasped his hands and rested his elbows on the armrests of the chair. He looked at Hong Kongquan quietly, and the pressure in his eyes gradually became apparent. Not familiar? This is the tracking chip on your body that shows your whereabouts on that day. Hong Kongquan, don't tell me that you don't even believe in the accuracy of the positioning chip? Look at your route. Leave from your house, go to the gay bar, then leave from the back door of the gay bar, take the subway to an apartment complex near the 4th Ring Road, and finally stop in front of this person's apartment. Then we entered his house. Hong Kongquan finally raised his head and glared at Hua Xiaoheng. He could no longer contain the shock in his heart. How was that possible? His tracking chip had already been modified by that person using those 4 lines of AI programming language. Every time he made a special move, as long as he sent an order to the central control system, the 4 lines of AI programming language would automatically hide his whereabouts. He had tried many times and nothing had ever gone wrong. Hua Xiaoheng could actually break through the control of the 4 lines of AI programming language? Absolutely impossible. Even Zhao Liangzi, the widely recognized computer expert of the Special Operations Forces, could not find these 4 lines of AI programming language that were hidden seamlessly. He also knew that Zhao Liangzi had been exiled overseas because he had offended Hua Xiaoheng last month. How could Hua Xiaoheng know something that even Zhao Liangzi could not detect? Or were there other experts in the Special Operations Forces that he had not noticed? Finding these 4 lines of AI programming language from the program of the Central Control System was like finding 4 drops of pure water that had been secretly placed in the ocean. Who could separate 4 drops of pure water from the ocean? Even from a probability perspective, it was absolutely impossible. Because he was completely unwilling to believe that Hua Xiaoheng and his men could discover the 4 lines of highly advanced AI programming language, Hong Kongquan naturally thought that Hua Xiaoheng was lying to him, so he continued to deny it. Major General Hua, don't waste your time. You learned your bluff from me. Do you think I will believe you? If you want to pin a murder case on me just because you made up a routine, you will have to see if the military court agrees to it. Hong Kongquan angrily pounded the table. I want to see General Ji. I want to see Speaker Long. Don't even think about using your power to avenge a personal grudge. The smile in Hua Xiaoheng's eyes deepened. He leaned forward slightly and said calmly, Hong Kongquan, I didn't say anything. How do you know that this is a murder case? Hong Kongquan's expression suddenly changed. His entire body trembled violently, and even his teeth chattered loudly. In an instant he almost lost the ability to speak. His pupils dilated and his breathing became heavy. His face turned purple and his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. This was the sign of a person who was extremely nervous and had blood rushing to his head. However, Hua Xiaoheng still crossed his legs calmly and leisurely enjoyed the rapid changes in Hong Kongquan's expression. Even the police did not say that this was a homicide. Why are you so sure that this is a murder case? Do you have more clues than the police? Can you share them with the police? Hong Kongquan was about to go crazy from Hua Xiaoheng's calm demeanor. He was really too nervous. Hua Xiaoheng was indeed an expert at making full use of his psychological state. First, he had personally captured Hong Kong alive, which had already broken through his first psychological defense. Then, after a day of exhausting interrogation, he suddenly threw out the photo of the Weibo blogger, Churchill's Garden, Lu Dayong's death, which seemed to have nothing to do with him. This sudden attack caught Hong Kong off guard, and it quickly broke through his second line of defense. Then he threw out the records of Hong Kong's whereabouts that day, hinting that there was a problem with the 4 lines of AI programming language that Hong Kong relied on the most. This final attack not only broke through Hong Kong's last psychological defense, but it also made him fall into Hua Xiaoheng's psychological trap. He was eager to use the truth that he had long since disguised to fight back against Hua Xiaoheng. The moment he called out Hua Xiaoheng's hidden meaning was also the moment he exposed himself. Hua Xiaoheng looked at Hong Kong mockingly, like a cat catching a mouse. In fact, he was even more cunning than the cat catching the mouse. Without saying a word, he made Hong Kong reveal the truth. I didn't. Hong Kong struggled. I was just making deductions based on common sense. Hua Xiaoheng, don't think that you can replace me like this. You did so much just to suppress me and not give me the chance to replace you. Hong Kong, you have to know that today's interrogation was all recorded and recorded. If you continue to contradict yourself, there will only be more and more loopholes. Hua Xiaoheng's face darkened, and he stopped playing around with Hong Kong. This Weibo blogger's case is only one of the many serious crimes that you have committed. I didn't. This person has nothing to do with me. Today was the first time I saw him. Hong Kong tried his best to deny it. You took out this bloody photo of his death and then said that I went to his house. Aren't you implying that I killed him? This is obviously a reasonable inference. How could you frame me like this? Reasonable inference? How many people would see a photo of a person they don't know and think that they are going to be framed for murder? Hong Kong, I'm talking about you being too smart for your own good. Hua Xiaoheng turned around in his chair expressionlessly and turned on the big screen in the interrogation room. Look, this is the surveillance video from the police station. Do you see it? The person standing in front of Lu Dayong's apartment is you. Hong Kong immediately retorted, this is me? Do you have evidence? Did you measure his height? Did you see his back? You said that person was me? Do you have eyes? This is indeed a deliberate frame-up. The person in the video was indeed much taller and more muscular than Hong Kong himself. If one only looked at the person in the video, they would definitely not associate this person with Hong Kong. Hua Xiaoheng's calm and steady gaze moved over to Hong Kong, who was trembling nervously. This is the first night watch. It's the 4th night watch today and will make up for yesterday's one-night watch. Everyone, please cast your guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. The 2nd night watch at 1 in the afternoon, the 3rd night watch at 7 in the evening, and the 4th night watch at 9 in the evening. P.S. Thank you Sing_Sing for your 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Mwah. Chapter 11:20. According to the police department's investigation, the person who appeared at Lu Dayong's apartment was about 1.8 meters tall and had an argument with Lu Dayong at the door. He was probably a debt collector from an online lending company. However, the police department also did a thorough investigation and found that none of the online lenders that Lu Dayong owed had sent any debt collectors to Lu Dayong's home that day. Therefore, this person was definitely not sent by the online lending company. However, it could not be ruled out that he was a debt collector sent by a private lending company without any records. This type of lending was illegal, so there was no way they would jump out and tell the police that they had sent him. At this point, this case should have become a cold case, and would probably be left unsolved after a few years. However, because of Hong Kong's lead, the case had surfaced again and there was a possibility that it could be solved. Hua Xiaoheng looked at Hong Kong with a smile and said confidently, height? Back view? Hong Kong, you really disappoint me. Can these indications be used to determine a person's identity? Hong Kong looked confused. You can tell it's not me just by looking at the height and back view. I'm not gay and I've never been to that gay bar you mentioned. So many facts don't match, so why do you insist that it's me? Hua Xiaoheng, I've always treated you well, so why do you have to target me? Do you know what you're doing? Do you really think that you can sit back and relax in this position just because you've pulled me down? He pointed at where Hua Xiaoheng was sitting and looked very distressed. It was as if he had seen a lost sheep and was trying to persuade him to turn back. Hua Xiaoheng raised his hand disapprovingly. Hong Kong, don't change the subject. We're talking about how to prove that the person in the surveillance video is not you. We're not talking about the personal relationship between us. It wasn't me in the first place. I've never been to this place. Hong Kongquan insisted that he had never been there. Hua Xiaoheng took back the report that recorded Hong Kongquan's whereabouts on that day and said calmly, "The surveillance system shows that you have indeed been to these places. It's fine if you don't admit it. The court is all about evidence. Murderers all say that they didn't kill anyone. If a one-sided statement can win the court's trust, then what's the use of the law? Even if you have this evidence, it's only circumstantial evidence." Hong Kongquan glared at Hua Xiaoheng. "So what if I've been there? The person who appeared in this apartment wasn't me. I told you we need to verify if this person is you." Hua Xiaoheng waved his hand. "Come in." A medical staff wearing a white coat, a mask and a medicine box pushed open the door and walked in. Hua Xiaoheng raised his chin at Hong Kongquan. "That's him. Draw his blood and do a DNA test." "What are you doing?" Hong Kongquan stood up in shock and raised his arms to stop the medical staff from coming over. "Why do you want to test my DNA?" "To verify your identity." Hua Xiaoheng looked up at Hong Kongquan, amused. "You don't think that we can only rely on our own eyes to determine whether or not that person is you, do you? In today's society, seeing is believing is already outdated." Hua Xiaoheng stood up as well. "Eyes can lie, ears can lie, and even consciousness can lie. Only your DNA doesn't lie. Don't tell me you have that person's DNA?" Hong Kongquan looked at Hua Xiaoheng in shock. "Don't play the game of the thief calling the thief." Hua Xiaoheng folded his hands behind his back and stood tall and straight. He said casually, "Of course the police have it on file." "Impossible." Hong Kongquan immediately retorted. "That person's apartment was burned to the ground. How could there be any evidence left? Not to mention DNA. Even if there was, it would have been burned a long time ago." Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "Another clue. Thank you for providing it. It seems like you know the crime scene like the back of your hand." Hong Kongquan's face turned red. "I saw it on the news. This case was on Weibo?" "Oh? You're so concerned about this case? You even read the crime scene report released by the police?" Hua Xiaoheng dug a hole for Hong Kongquan without batting an eyelid. Hong Kongquan could only take advantage of the situation and admit it. "Of course this case is very sensational." "Really? But just now you flatly denied that you knew anything about this case and said that you didn't know who Lu Deong was." Hua Xiaoheng smiled. "Actually, you said that you knew this person from the beginning and that you knew about this case from the internet. Everything made sense. What a pity, what a pity." Hua Xiaoheng shook his head and sighed regretfully. It was as if they weren't talking about a murder case, but a quiz show on TV, where Hong Kongquan lost the biggest prize because of a slip of the tongue. Hong Kongquan's face turned red, then white, and the corners of his mouth twitched. He couldn't say a word. Hua Xiaoheng raised his hand. "Drop." The medical staff in white walked over with a large syringe in his hand. Two other members of the Special Operations Forces came in and fixed Hong Kongquan in his seat. They rolled up his sleeves and let the doctor draw a syringe of blood. Hong Kongquan yelled with all his might, "Hua Xiaoheng! You framed me. What can this evidence prove?" "This is the physical evidence." Hua Xiaoheng looked at the syringe in the doctor's hand. "I'll go and interrogate the witness now." "Witness?" Oh. Hong Kongquan was stunned. How could there be a witness? Wasn't Lu Deong dead? Kai Songyin. Hua Xiaoheng turned around and curled his lips where Hong Kongquan couldn't see. Hong Kongquan's vision darkened. He finally understood Hua Xiaoheng's ability to prank people. He was like a skilled animal trainer holding a rope in his hand and dangling it in the air, causing the animals to jump in one by one. Hua Xiaoheng left the interrogation room Hong Kongquan was in and sat down in another interrogation room next door. "Bring Kai Songyin in." The dead Weibo blogger, Churchill's Garden Lu Deong was the link that connected Kai Songyin to Hong Kongquan. Kai Songyin walked in with pursed lips. She didn't have any makeup on, so she looked much older than she usually did. Hua Xiaoheng looked at her coldly for a while before pointing at the seat opposite him. "Mrs. Tan, please sit." "I wouldn't dare. Please call me Kai Songyin." Kai Songyin raised her head and sat opposite Hua Xiaoheng. "I've already decided to divorce Tan Dongbang. I won't be Mrs. Tan anymore." Hua Xiaoheng wasn't interested in Kai Songyin and Tan Dongbang's marital relationship. He looked down at Kai Songyin's interrogation records during the day and said, "Kai Songyin, your company's accounts are not under our jurisdiction. We are only responsible for investigating whether you colluded with the Japanese and betrayed the country." Kai Songyin, who had been very calm before, suddenly exploded. She put her hands on the table and stood up like a spring. What? Get this straight. When did I collude with the Japanese? Saying that she colluded with the Americans was somewhat true. The Japanese? Were they even worthy? The Kai family's ancestors had fought against the Japanese with real swords and guns, and many of them had died. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they had a national grudge against the Japanese. Saying that she colluded with the Japanese? They might as well stab her to death. You didn't? But your business partner, Hong Kongquan, had a good time working with the Japanese. Huo Xiaoheng rested his elbows on the table and clasped his hands together. He rested his chin on the back of his hand and looked at Kai Songyin meaningfully. From the last election to this election you guys worked well together. Kai Songyin's face flushed immediately. She said angrily, "What does Hong Kongquan working with the Japanese have to do with me? I have nothing to do with him." Nothing to do with him? Huo Xiaoheng once again took out the photo of the Weibo blogger, Churchill's Garden, Lu Dayong's death and placed it in front of Kai Songyin. He narrowed his eyes and suddenly asked coldly, "Then why did he become your assassin and kill this Weibo blogger?" Kai Songyin's heart trembled. She quickly tried to clear her name. "I didn't ask him to kill anyone. I never did." She immediately realized that she had let the cat out of the bag, so she quickly corrected herself. "I don't even know this person. How would I know why he wanted to kill him? I just interrogated Hong Kongquan, and he said that you ordered him to kill him. But you won't admit it." Huo Xiaoheng tried to trick Kai Songyin without batting an eyelid. Also, the police also found out that this Weibo blogger had a financial transaction with your personal assistant. You say you don't know him? Kai Songyin pursed her lips. She knew that she couldn't hide this anymore. From the moment she found out about Lu Dayong's death, she had been worried about this day. However, she already felt wronged. She had never intended to take the blogger's life. She never thought that Hong Kongquan would be so cruel and merciless. He killed someone on his own, and now he was trying to turn the tables on her. Kai Songyin said with a straight face, "I didn't ask him to kill anyone. He did it on his own. It had nothing to do with me. It was the second night watch. Today was the fourth night watch, and it was to make up for yesterday's first night watch. Everyone, please vote for your guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. The third night watch at 7 p.m., and the fourth night watch at 9 p.m. Moi. Chapter 11:21. Oh? According to you, you only wanted to teach this blogger a lesson, but Hong Kongquan acted on his own and killed him? Everything Huo Xiaoheng asked was information he had gotten from Gunyanji. To be precise, if Gunyanji hadn't discovered the relationship between the blogger and Kai Songyin, they probably wouldn't have known how close Hong Kongquan and Kai Songyin were until now. To the extent that they were willing to kill for each other, this relationship, Kai Songyin was speechless. Huo Xiaoheng's eyes flashed. Hong Kongquan is really loyal to you and your wife. He helped you kill people and helped Tan Dongbang cheat in the election. What? What did you use to bribe Hong Kongquan? A high position and a generous salary? Or beautiful women and money? Kai Songyin's lips twitched in disdain. Major General Hua, your words are too vulgar. Couldn't Tan Dongbang and I have conquered Hong Kongquan with our charisma, and he automatically worked for us? We never do things like bribing people. Of course she had done it, but in her opinion, it wasn't called bribing, but an exchange of benefits. Wasn't an election a large-scale exchange of benefits permitted by law? And they hadn't even had the time to give Hong Kongquan any benefits. So Kai Songyin had a clear conscience. Why should she admit to something she hadn't done? You think I'll believe that? Huo Xiaoheng couldn't help but laugh mockingly. If you and Tan Dongbang have the charisma to convince Hong Kongquan, then the entire nation will be convinced by you. You won't need to cheat in the election anymore. You'll definitely be elected fair and square. Kai Songyin was so angry at Huo Xiaoheng that she couldn't speak. You're not going to say anything? Fine, I'll ask Tan Dongbang. Tan Dongbang is someone who has done great things, so he knows that great things don't bother with trifles. When he says it, you'll know that your last chance for a reduced sentence is gone. Huo Xiaoheng stood up. Think about it carefully. I'll go interrogate Tan Dongbang. Kai Songyin's eyes narrowed when she heard the name, Tan Dongbang. A trace of disdain, disgust and darkness flashed through her eyes. Tan Dongbang's interrogation room was opposite Kai Songyin's. When Huo Xiaoheng entered, Tan Dongbang was already sitting there. Tan Dongbang sat up uneasily when he saw Huo Xiaoheng walk in his military uniform. Major General Hua, I really didn't bribe or cheat in the election. If there's a problem with your system, you can't possibly blame it on me, right? Wu Xiaoheng looked at Tan Dongbang. He had only been locked up for a few days, but the usually elegant Tan Dongbang was like a salted vegetable in the winter, shriveled and rancid. His hair was greasy and strands of it were tied in a knot, hanging on his shiny forehead. He probably hadn't been eating or sleeping well for the past few days. He had big dark circles under his eyes, and the flesh on his face was gone, leaving only his high cheekbones. He looked a bit like those mean women in the market. Wu Xiaoheng sat across from him and quickly cut to the chase. Tan Dongbang, why would Hong Kongquan help you cheat in the election? What did you offer him? Tan Dongbang froze. His eyes darted around, not daring to meet Wu Xiaoheng's eyes as he muttered. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't know anything from the beginning to the end. You're saying that Hong Kongquan didn't ask for anything and helped you cheat in the election twice just to get you the position of Prime Minister? Wu Xiaoheng frowned. Could it be that he has a crush on you? Tan Dongbang's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Major General Hua, you can't just say things like that. I have nothing to do with Hong Kongquan. This is the first time I admit that he has something to do with my wife. No, they do. His wife and my wife are best friends, so he probably helped us out of respect for his wife. There was a slight possibility of this saying being true, but it wasn't more than 0.1%. Wu Xiaoheng had never seen someone who didn't seek personal gain for personal gain. Being moved by personal charisma only applied to upright people, not shady people like Hong Kongquan. Besides, what about Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin's personal charisma? That would be too difficult. They had also investigated Kai Songyin and Tan Dongbang and found that the two of them had no financial ties to Hong Kongquan. Not only did the two families not send each other money or gifts, but the two families even treated each other to meals in public places and didn't eat at their own homes. From this perspective, the relationship between the two families couldn't be considered particularly good. Because true family ties meant that the adults and children of the two families didn't have to worry about avoiding each other at all. In other words, Hong Kongquan really hadn't received any benefits. But that didn't make sense. Wu Xiaoheng thought about it and thought that there could only be one explanation for this, and that was that Hong Kongquan was probably after something that Tan Dongbang could do for him after he took office. Tan Dongbang became Prime Minister, the head of state in name, and also one of the 3 most powerful people in the country. With this kind of status, Hong Kongquan could ask for many more benefits. Wu Xiaoheng looked up at Tan Dongbang with a smile. From what I see, Hong Kongquan helped you cheat in the election and killed someone for your wife. This has already exceeded the scope of helping your wife's best friend and her best friend's husband. Tan Dongbang frowned and thought about it for a moment before he finally understood what Wu Xiaoheng was saying. He immediately felt like grass had grown on his head. Major General Hua, what do you mean? Hong Kongquan might have helped me a little, but what does that have to do with my wife? Kill someone for her? Are you mistaking me for someone else? Although Tan Dongbang was happy to cheat, he absolutely couldn't accept his wife cheating on him. Wu Xiaoheng took out the photo of the Weibo blogger, Churchill's Garden, Liu Dayong's death and pushed it in front of Tan Dongbang. Look at this yourself. This person offended your wife. Hong Kongquan personally killed him. Tan Dongbang glared at the photo and was so angry that his hands were shaking. He stammered, "WW, is this person? Why did he offend my wife? Why did Hong Kongquan kill someone?" Wu Xiaoheng looked at Tan Dongbang's expression and actions coldly. He actually couldn't find any flaws. He felt that Tan Dongbang wasn't faking it. He probably didn't know about the deal between Kai Songyin and Hong Kongquan. Wu Xiaoheng said calmly, "This person used your daughter to threaten your wife. Your wife was furious. He was only half telling the truth. Kai Songyin was indeed angry because her daughter had been kidnapped in New York. After reading the text, she thought that the Weibo blogger had turned around to threaten her, so she asked Hong Kongquan for help, hoping that he could use his Secret Service personnel to help her vent her anger." Tan Dongbang inhaled sharply. He was furious. It was because of little darling? Then he deserved to die. Tan Dongbang didn't have much affection for Kai Songyin anymore, but he still doted on his daughter, Tan Guirin. If he threatened you, you could have sued him. Why did you have to take his life? Wu Xiaoheng said calmly. Now you and your wife have another crime on your hands. I didn't want him to die. I didn't know anything about what you're talking about. Tan Dongbang wasn't lying this time. He really didn't know about returning to his alma mater to receive a medal. Fine. Even if you didn't know about this, Hong Kong still tried to help you cheat in the interim election this time. Tell me, why did he try to do it this time? Tan Dongbang said angrily. When did he try to help me cheat? He didn't help me at all this time. But there are still traces of election cheating in the surveillance system. It's almost exactly the same situation as last time. Huo Xiaoheng stared intently at Tan Dongbang. He tried his best to remain calm and not reveal any emotions that might be interpreted too much. He continued to ask, wasn't the person who helped you this time Hong Kong? Was it someone else? This was the reason why Huo Xiaoheng had gone one big circle and asked all three of them separately. He had always felt that these three people weren't the masterminds. They were only the agents of the masterminds behind the scenes. It was the third watch. Today was the fourth watch. It was yesterday's first watch. Everyone's guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Hurry up and vote. 9 p.m. the fourth watch. Moi. Chapter 11:22. Tan Dongbang obviously wasn't as good as the professionally trained Hong Kong when it came to controlling his expression and emotions. Huo Xiaoheng's words, wasn't Hong Kong the one who helped you this time? It was someone else. As soon as he said that, Tan Dongbang looked at Huo Xiaoheng as if he had seen a ghost and almost screamed. What did you say? I don't understand a single word. Tan Dongbang waved his fists angrily. I said I didn't cheat, so I didn't cheat. Who the hell knows how your stupid system could be like this? No, there's nothing wrong with the system. You set me up on purpose. Huo Xiaoheng sighed and shook his head. You and Hong Kong were taught by the same teacher? And you were trained by the same institution? Both of your excuses are exactly the same. Both of them had been set up by someone else, and both of them were innocent, honest people who knew nothing. That's the truth. Tan Dongbang was so scared that his legs were cramping. He never would have guessed that the mastermind behind the scenes was so powerful. How could Huo Xiaoheng have discovered him? If this person even knew about the mastermind behind the scenes, was there anything in this world that he didn't know? Tan Dongbang had lost all hope in this world, and his emotions hovered on the edge of collapse. Huo Xiaoheng had been calmly observing Tan Dongbang's expression to adjust his strategy. Seeing that Tan Dongbang was about to collapse, Huo Xiaoheng suddenly said, it was also this person who helped you last time, right? But last time this person helped you through Hong Kong. Tan Dongbang was flabbergasted as he stared at Huo Xiaoheng. The red veins in his eyes could be seen clearly. Huo Xiaoheng's tone became more and more severe. Hong Kong is hopeless. He has the Japanese behind him. Disrupting national order, interfering in the election to cheat, killing civil servants and betraying national secrets. Every one of his crimes is enough for him to die several times over. Tan Dongbang, are you still going to cooperate with this kind of person, protect this kind of person, and die with him? If it wasn't for Hong Kong, you would at most be guilty of election bribery, not death. But you're colluding with Hong Kong and betraying the country. That's a capital crime. Treason was a death sentence no matter which country it was in. Tan Dongbang finally broke down and let out a low wail from his throat. He abruptly clutched his head with his hands and yelled, No. I did not betray my country. I did not collude with the enemy. I don't want to die. Huo Xiaoheng quietly watched as Tan Dongbang wailed. After a while he changed the subject and softened his tone. However, as long as you tell the truth and draw a clear line between you and Hong Kong, I will plead with the military court to turn you into a tainted witness. Huo Xiaoheng leaned forward and said in a low voice, You will definitely be spared from the death penalty. But he couldn't escape punishment. Given Tan Dongbang's crimes, if he wasn't executed, he would be imprisoned for the rest of his life. But Tan Dongbang was fine as long as he didn't face the death penalty. As for whether Hong Kong would die or not, what did that have to do with him? He was doing it to protect himself. Tan Dongbang panted heavily. Are you serious? Do you dare to guarantee it? As long as I tell you the truth, will you spare my life? Huo Xiaoheng pointed at the position of the camera. Everything here is recorded and recorded. If I go back on my word, you can say it in the military court. We're not going to lynch anyone. Knowing that he wouldn't have to die, Tan Dongbang slowly regained his breath. Propping himself up on the table, he sat up straight and nodded. Fine, I'll tell you, but you have to remember your promise. He then said angrily, Little darling is infatuated with you. How could you treat her parents like this? Huo Xiaoheng was speechless. Was this their revenge on him for saying that Hong Kong had a crush on him earlier, so they were doing this to disgust Huo Xiaoheng? Huo Xiaoheng couldn't take it anymore. no matter how cultured and self-controlled he was, to be paired up with their idiot daughter so many times. Wu Xiaoheng's expression turned completely cold. His gaze shot over like a poisoned arrow. He sat up straight in his chair and enunciated each word clearly. Don't be so shameless. Don't you know what kind of person would be interested in your daughter? He had to restrain his anger to not curse. Tan Dongbang's face turned red instantly. It looked even worse than when he had just collapsed. He looked at Wu Xiaoheng in shock and stammered, You don't even like my daughter? Then why did you personally go to New York to save her? Wu Xiaoheng took a deep breath and quickly calmed down. I'm a soldier. Helping the citizens is my duty, but that doesn't include arranged marriages. Alright, if you keep talking about this, your daughter will have to come and help with the investigation. With that, Tan Dongbang finally ended the topic. He didn't dare mention Tan Guirin again. He knew that he and Kai Songyin might have brought this upon themselves, but his daughter, Tan Guirin, was completely innocent. Tan Dongbang looked like he was about to cry. He rested his hands on the table and said weakly, Then if I tell you, will you definitely plead to the court? Swear. Wu Xiaoheng refused to swear. It's fine if you don't believe me. If swearing worked, then you wouldn't have cheated. How many people who cheated would actually remember the sacred vows made at their wedding? Tan Dongbang's face twitched. He completely understood that Wu Xiaoheng wasn't someone who would be swayed by force or persuasion. In front of him, the only way to get some benefits was to confess and be lenient. There is someone helping Hong Kongquan behind the scenes. That person is very powerful and has been working with Hong Kongquan since 7 years ago. Tan Dongbang muttered in a low voice and spoke very quickly. This information regarding Hong Kongquan had been revealed to him by that person in order to gain Tan Dongbang's trust. Even the person behind the scenes probably didn't expect that a person with such ambitions to become prime minister would have such a weak psychological defense. However, low-class goods that relied on packaging all had this characteristic. Wu Xiaoheng keenly heard the words, 7 years ago. If he looked at the timeline, Gu Nianji had also suddenly appeared at the scene of the car accident in Sea City 7 years ago. What does that person look like? How did they communicate? This was what Wu Xiaoheng was most interested in. Logically speaking, Hong Kongquan was the director of the Secret Service. His every move was under heavy scrutiny. There were countless overt and covert surveillance. How could someone break through all these obstacles and bypass his surveillance to communicate with Hong Kongquan for 7 years without being discovered? Tan Dongbang shook his head. I don't know what he looks like. I've never seen him before, and I believe that Hong Kongquan has never seen him either. We've always communicated with him through the phone. Phone? Wu Xiaoheng furrowed his brows as he vaguely felt that this didn't make sense. Tan Dongbang and Hong Kongquan's landlines and phones were all monitored by him. If such a call had come in and if that person had only contacted Hong Kongquan and Tan Dongbang directly through the phone, how could he not know? Could it be that the phone surveillance system had also malfunctioned? Or could it be that the people monitoring the phone had malfunctioned? Wu Xiaoheng could only think of these two possibilities because he couldn't think of any other reason at the moment. The phone surveillance system was a sub-program of the central control system. He remembered that he had checked it earlier and it hadn't been invaded by the 4 lines of AI programming language. As for the people monitoring the phone, they were randomly assigned to monitor a company. If something had happened to the people monitoring the phone, they would have had to bribe someone from the entire company to do it. Was it possible? Of course not. Wu Xiaoheng quickly eliminated these two possibilities. Of course he would send people to verify his conclusions again. The phone surveillance system would use Gu Nianji's program to check again. That program could even detect the intrusion of the central control system's AI programming language, so a small phone surveillance system was not even worth mentioning. The company monitoring the phone would also have to be reinvestigated, but Wu Xiaoheng was still inclined to believe that it had nothing to do with them before they were confirmed to be guilty. There must be other factors that allowed the person behind the scenes to escape his heavy surveillance. Wu Xiaoheng looked at Tan Dongbang silently and said coldly, How did you communicate through the phone? Explain clearly. It was the 4th night watch. Today was the 4th night watch to make up for yesterday's 1-night watch. Everyone's guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Hurry up and vote. Mwah. P.S. The previous chapter has been edited, so please download it again. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.